Members, can we members, can we get some order, please? It's just gone 2 o'clock. Right, it's good to see so many faces in the chamber for this afternoon's debate on something that's very important for this council going forward. Item 1 on the agenda we have is apologies for absence. Have we received any apologies? Councillor Dale?
Apologies, Chair. Apologies, Chair. We've got quite a few today, unfortunately, due to holidays and illness, I'm afraid. So we've got Councillor Kevin Tate, Michelle Evans, Neil Baker, Martin Thacker, although he very much would like to be here, as you can imagine. Richard Welton, Pam Jones, William Jones, Lillian Dayton, and Pat Ancliffe. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Lacey?
Yes, got 2 apologies from Councillor Caroline Smith and the other councillor, Christine Smith. Thank you.
Councillor Hancock?
Just from Councillor Stokes.
Thank you, members. Right, move on to item 2, is declaration of interests. Are there any declarations of interest on the item on the agenda for today? Councillor Dale?
Just to highlight, I'm a member of Derbyshire County Council as well. I believe this has been Standards Committee, and there is a dispensation to allow me to participate and vote in the discussions today. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Smith?
Just to highlight that I'm actually an employee of Derbyshire County Council.
Councillor Reid?
Yeah, just to highlight that on Derbyshire County Council, and I've been advised that being on Cabinet, I'm going to abstain today and respect that it is this administration's decision and this Cabinet's proposal, but there could be a potential conflict unforeseen elsewhere.
Thank you. Councillor Barry?
Yes, Chair. I work for Derbyshire County Council, so just to acknowledge that. Thank you.
Thank you. Right then, members, move on to the main business, which is item 3 on the agenda, the local government reorganisation submission. I'll firstly go through how I propose to take this item. First, there will be a presentation from officers. Then I will open the floor for questions to officers on the report and presentation. I'll then open the floor up for members to speak and express their opinion on the item. The decision will be for the Cabinet to make at its meeting on Thursday. Today is so views of council members can be expressed before the decision is taken. I would like to remind everyone that speeches are limited to 5 minutes, but I am prepared to be flexible on this occasion in view of the significance of the issue. However, I would ask speakers not to repeat themselves, as I will intervene, nor to abuse this privilege. I am reminding you that you should be respectful of those who are speaking. Other councillors must remain silent whilst a councillor is speaking, unless they wish to make a point of order or a personal explanation. I'll now hand over to officers for the presentation. So over to you, Lee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm sure you'll all remember Councillor Barker earlier this year saying that our council had to be at the table and influencing the shape of proposals for LGR, and in doing so recognising that whatever outcome is reached, it will have the greatest potential to serve our communities the best if our council were at that table. This presentation and the case for change is the culmination of this work. So, quick recap. In December 2024, the government published the English Devolution White Paper, setting out a clear direction for reform. By February 2025, they had invited proposals for local government reorganisation, and in response, councils in Derbyshire came together to submit a joint interim proposal in March 2025. That proposal set out a vision to replace the current two-tier system with two new unitary councils, one in the north and one in the south. You'll recall at the time that Derbyshire County Council submitted a separate proposal for a single county-wide unitary, one that left Derby City as is. The districts and boroughs and city came together on this because we believe that having two unitaries is the better way to stay locally responsive, financially strong and democratically accountable. When assessing proposals, the government will use 6 key criteria. We built our proposal around these criteria. So, a single tier structure that covers the whole area, councils of the right size to be efficient and resilient, a focus on high quality, sustainable services, proposals shaped by local needs and views, structures that support devolution, and a commitment to stronger community engagement. And we believe that this proposal meets those expectations. So why change then? Well, LGR gives us a chance to do things differently and better. Local government reorganisation presents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to reimagine how we serve our communities. It should be seen as more than just structural change. It's a chance to fundamentally reshape the way local government works for people. And it's an opportunity to recast the system to be one that better helps residents live happier, healthier and more fulfilling lives. LGR represents an opportunity to shift the focus from reacting to problems to preventing them. A system where services are joined up, seamless and designed around the real-life journeys of our people, not the silos we've inherited. It's a chance to secure long-term financial resilience, and it's also an opportunity to simplify the landscape so that residents, businesses and visitors no longer have to ask who does what. Through reorganisation, we also strengthen our collective voice, regionally and nationally. We become better connected and more effective partners to the Mayor and the East Midlands Combined County Authority, being more influential in shaping the future of our region. So why 2 unitaries? Well, in the beginning we considered about 15, I think, and we concluded that a single large unitary might look efficient on paper, but it risks becoming too remote and unresponsive. But on the other hand, 3 or more councils would struggle to achieve the scale needed for resilience and effective transformation. A north-south split strikes the right balance. It keeps population sizes manageable, better preserves local identity, and ensures that services are tailored to the needs of different communities. It also creates a single point of contact and accountability in each area, making it easier to get things done and to be held account. Crucially though, 2 unitaries will better empower neighbourhoods and communities through the creation of meaningful local area committees, bringing decision making closer to the people it affects, much better than a single unitary could. So a proposal of this scale must be influenced by the people it affects. While it's not a referendum, residents, partners and stakeholders have been listened to carefully. Their views, along with technical assessments and other analysis, have helped shape this final proposal. The consultation was thorough, inclusive and independently delivered by Public Perspectives, a respected sector leader. It ran from the 30th of June till the 10th of August and used a wide range of methods to reach as many people as possible. Over 7,300 questionnaires were completed online, by phone, on paper and in accessible formats. And we also received written submissions and conducted interviews with key stakeholders including health, emergency services, education and business. We had engagement from across the county. Views were mixed, as you'd probably expect with a change of this scale. 43% supported LGR, citing benefits like efficiency and modernisation. 38% opposed it, often due to concerns about local representation and disruption. 39% supported the two-unitary model, while 49% preferred to retain the current system. It's important to note that whilst valid, less than 1% of the people took part in Derbyshire. It's a mixed bag overall, but it's a reminder that different parts of Derbyshire have different lived experiences, and that our final proposal must best reflect the character and needs of different parts of Derbyshire. That's what the two-unitary model is designed to do. In terms of our key stakeholders and their messages, key partners have been clear. They want to stay involved and they want to help shape the future. They're not wedded to one single option. They recognise the fine margins between the four options in this proposal, but they are urging us to move forward. They've told us that the current uncertainty is a distraction and that what we need to do is coalesce around a shared vision. They want us to focus on the positives, the opportunity to create something better, more efficient and more responsive for the people of Derbyshire. Stakeholders also emphasise the importance of collaboration between the two new councils in particular and with regional partners like EMCA. They want to see a pan-Derbyshire outlook, not parochialism. But they did also remind us to think local as well, to protect neighbourhood working and to tailor services to the diverse needs of our communities, urban and rural, affluent and deprived. And they urged us to align with the wider public sector reforms so that we can maximise impact, avoid duplication and deliver real value for residents. For this next section, I'm going to introduce Matt, and who will explain the process we followed to develop the options.
Thank you, Lee, and afternoon, everybody. So, you've got a 150-page document in front of you, and as Lee set out, there are 6 criteria. So what I'm trying to do is just tease out the key points in the criteria, but naturally I'm not able to cover everything that the document says. So the 15 options that were considered originally were around, as Lee had suggested, 1 council, upper tier boundaries, 3 unitaries and many variations of the north and south. The 4 options for the north and south that are in the submission have been assessed against financial and technical analysis, which we'll run through, and also an analysis of the democratic makeup. To describe the options, option A, which is the top left-hand corner there, if you can see it, so that is, broadly speaking, and referred to as Amber Valley in the north. Option B, broadly termed Amber Valley in the south. Option A1 is a variation of option A, which is a new boundary with the majority of Amber Valley in the north. And then B1 is a variation of option B, again a new boundary with a greater proportion of Amber Valley in the south than option A1. So as Lee had set out, this is the 6 government criteria, but naturally with anything of this scale you wouldn't expect it just to be as broad brush as that. So within those 4 letters that are on the right hand side there are around 78 different criteria set out in those letters that also informed the bid and the submission and the assessment process too. So just quickly running through each one in turn, and on the right-hand side there, that's the government guidance. So what I'm about to say for these criteria applies to all 4 options. So there is a breakdown in Appendix 3 in your report around the difference between options A, A1, B, B1, but what I'm about to go through applies to them all. So all 4 proposals are sensible, equally balanced economic areas, sensible, equally balanced population around that 500,000 figure that's been in the government guidance, and a single tier across Derbyshire. One of the key points was no place to be left out. Equally balanced also in terms of revenue distribution through things like tax base, supporting sustainable public services, both north and south. And the differences, so options A and B are balanced and in line with this criteria. However, options A1 and B1 are slightly more nuanced, slightly more balanced, but generally they all meet the criteria. Criteria 2, the only thing that I'm going to flag on this one, because Jane will go into detail, is around the 500,000 figure. You can see on the right-hand side, it's one of the requirements in terms of improved capacity and withstanding shocks, the scale of the organisation, and then regarding the financial efficiencies and financial case, Jane will do that shortly. Criteria 3, so this is around high quality and sustainable public services, and through the discussions what government were telling us the areas that they were concerned about through this process was adult social care, children's services, homelessness, and some public health and growth elements as well. So they're not the only services were delivered. The new organisations are sizable organisations, probably 200 different services being delivered by the new councils. But what our proposal says is minimal fragmentation. So what government were concerned about was splitting services, especially tier 1 services, adult social care, children's, the impact of splitting those services. So the guidance was about minimal fragmentation. So our proposal has 2 upper tier authorities, and we've got 2 upper tier authorities now. So we see it as growing and shrinking rather than 2 new or splitting to create another. However, options 1A and 1B, so if you remember, they're the ones where splitting Amber Valley, naturally in splitting a district council, you'll have to fragment those services, those district council services. So that's also considered as part of the bid. And then the document does outline delivery opportunities for adult social care, children's services, public health, growth, housing, and then back office services. Mainly ICT is a key consideration in the technology. That's a lesson learned from other organisations that have done LGR in the past. Criteria 4 is all about working together and being informed by local needs. So it's worth saying that all councils in Derbyshire work together on LGR. On this proposal in front of you, all Derbyshire councils, with the exception of Derbyshire County Council, have collaborated on this proposal. However, all councils in Derbyshire, including Derbyshire County Council, have shared data to ensure credible proposals, both this proposal and then anything that Derbyshire County Council put forward in the future. Comprehensive communication and engagement, I'm not going to touch on that, Lee's done that. And then project governance structures included strategic input, which you'd expect, but for those key areas, we also had some operational teams stood up to develop the proposals for adult social care to understand delivery-wise what the real impacts may be. Criteria 5 is all about a structure that supports devolution arrangements, and for us that's how do we integrate with ENCA. Clear roles and responsibilities was a large consideration. So establishing simpler structures, clearer lines of responsibility and decision making for EMCA. Obviously in the current structure we use structures like the SLB to work through that process, but LGR would streamline that. Provides a framework for delivery within current and future devolution arrangements. This is something that I don't think it's in the guidance, but on webinars, certainly the terminology of unitary councils being the building blocks for future devolution was said quite a bit, so that's the intent. Neighbourhood-led insight, shaping strategic decisions from bottom up, and neighbourhood area committees is mentioned. I'll go on to that on the next slide. Speeding up investment in vital areas, so money being devolved to the mayor and then being distributed more quickly. And then given a stronger voice regionally and nationally for our areas. Criteria 6 is all about stronger community and neighbourhood empowerment. So I've just lifted an extract here from a letter that we received on the 3rd of June from MHCLG, where it says the government wants to see local authority hardwiring community engagement into their own structures, preferably through neighbourhood area committees. We understand neighbourhood area committees to be local committees with ward members, parish councils, partner organisations, might be community safety team. However, MHCLG have suggested that there'll be more guidance as things progress on neighbourhood area committees, do's and don'ts, and in the bid we've committed to work with MHCLG or LGA or whoever's leading that piece of work in future to develop our structures. So I referred to Appendix 3, and these are the options that are in Appendix 3, with the overview, as I described earlier, of what the split is. Just a sample of some of the key statistics that have been used to create this scoring, and then there's a scoring matrix across the bottom. So these figures, where it says weighted and unweighted, is around different scoring based on the consultation response. So is it a weighted consultation response or is it an unweighted consultation response? And that slightly changes the figure. It's probably a little bit too much detail for this slide. But just in summary, you can see through all the scoring, all of these options are within a factor of 1 of each other. So there isn't a lot of difference between all 4 options. So in summary, all options proposed satisfactorily meet the government guidance in our opinion. Options A and B use whole district boundaries, which is encouraged through the government guidance because it's simpler, less disruption, less fragmentation, but also less nuance, less opportunity to reshape. Options A1 and B1 split Amber Valley at parish level, which does take on the opportunity to be more nuanced and communities reflecting lived experience, however slightly more complex to implement. And then all options aim for financial sustainability, improved service delivery and stronger community engagement. And on the financial sustainability, Jane will go on to that very shortly. And then in terms of political representation, so what's in the bid, the proposal includes a councillor to elector ratio of between 5,200 and 5,500. Just for context, at county level that's currently 10,600 and 1,500 at district level. The options have been developed in line with Local Government Boundary Commission guidance, and what that would lead to is 162 councillors across Derbyshire from currently 447, and then in our district taking the county and district councillors from 61 down to 16. And at that point, I think Jane will talk you through the finances.
Thank you, Matt. This is the bit that you're all really excited about, I know, so just stay in your seats, bear with me. Okay, so we're going to talk through the financial case now. So, as Matt mentioned when he was going through the criteria, criteria 2 is all about being able to demonstrate that we can achieve efficiencies, improve capacity and withstand financial shocks. And the proposal says that the new councils are the right size to achieve that, and that the new councils will remain viable, stable and able to withstand pressures and demands into the future. And what I'm going to go through on the next few slides is to demonstrate how we've been able to make such a bold statement. So just a little bit about the approach to modelling the financial case. The model's built on an evidence-led analysis developed by KPMG, and we've been partnering with KPMG throughout this process. All of the Derbyshire Section 151 officers have been collaborating to test and challenge the assumptions and to apply local knowledge. I'll come on to that on the next slide, but that's been something that's been really important to us. A model's great, but a model is a model, and each district and each county and each area across the country is going to have slightly different ways of doing things, and there needs to be some nuance, and we thought that was quite important to make sure that was reflected in our model. And you'll see throughout the model it talks about a mid-case scenario. The mid-case scenario is exactly what it says on the tin. It is a mid-case. So when you're doing modelling like this, you have a stretch case, which is a very optimistic view. You have a base case, which is a slightly pessimistic view. And then what you have straight down the middle is a mid-case, and we've gone with the mid-case. And the outputs that we're looking to generate from the modelling is the phased annual savings, the cumulative, you put my teeth in, the cumulative implementation costs, including disaggregation, which again I'll come on to in a little bit more detail shortly. The payback period, and that's just simple break-even between savings and implementation costs, and the total net benefit. So, the approach to modelling the financial case, I just mentioned it briefly, but there are risks with forecasting. You would expect that, especially on such a large scale. So, there are always inherent risks with any form of modelling, and this has been no different. They can never be 100% accurate. They are reliant on assumptions. And so something that me and my fellow Section 151 officers have been really keen on is trying to understand and ensure that those assumptions are as credible as possible at this moment in time. We've not got a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen over the next 2-3 years as we move towards implementation. But what we do know is what we've got today. We've put quite a lot of time into ensuring those assumptions are as credible as they can be, and I'll come on to that in a little bit more detail shortly. The biggest risk that we've identified, and we've logged this in the financial risks within the proposal, is around delivery, presents the largest unknown. I mean, any large-scale transformation project is challenging. I mean, you've only got to look at HS2 and see how much that's cost, how much more it's cost and how delayed it gets. These are big projects, and this is a major undertaking. So we've tried to factor in as much resilience to that as we can do through this modelling. So getting into the numbers. You'll see in the report, I think it's page 54, something like that, you'll see the actual savings, which I'm going to come on to on the next slide. But sitting behind that is what the model does. And what the model does is it focuses on those 12 categories, and it actually weights the savings in the years that we believe that they're achievable to receive. So you can see that the first 3 years we're not expecting to make any savings. That's all prior to the new organisation being created, and then they slowly ramp up. So years 2 and 3 are when we're expecting to make the majority of the savings into 4, and we actually don't finish maximising out on those savings until year 6. So there's been quite a lot of work gone into where those percentages should be and how they should be geared across the 6 years to try and give that a realistic opportunity of achieving as possible. And what that does is that turns that into that table, and that table is within the financial section within the report. And that's showing basically just the 43 million that you get to, which then becomes the cumulative annual saving right at the end on the far right column, and it takes us 6 years to get to that point. All of these categories, I think it's on the next slide actually. Yeah. So all of these categories, and I've done it pictorially just because visually that looks easier to understand, but each of those categories, in the back of the submission there's an appendix, Appendix 2, and what that does is it goes into detail on how each of those categories is made up. So what you've got in there is you've got a category that's called leaner leadership structures, and what it does is it explains what that is, and it also explains the rationale and the assumptions that we've gone to in terms of creating that. So it gives a little bit more detail as to why, and it's worth a look, that appendix. Exactly the same for implementation costs, so same methodology. You'll see that the implementation costs are, of course, pump primed. They're in the earlier years, so they actually start next year, which is being known as year -1, and they actually start to ramp up in the shadow year. So you'll see that the majority of the implementation costs are actually incurred in the shadow year and year 1. And that, again, equates into pounds over the 3 years. And you can see, again, that we expect that all of the implementation costs will have been incurred by year 3, and the total cost of implementation in the model is in the region of £65 million. If you say it quick, it doesn't sound too much money. And again, pictorially, that's where the graph is. And again, in Appendix 2, it breaks down all of those categories. So what it does, if you take the transition support team or the systems and IT integration, what it does for each of those is not only explains the percentage, but it explains the rationale behind what that is. So this little slide here basically shows all of the options. So you've got the 2 base options, option A and option B, and then you've got the 2 modifications, options A1 and option B1. And to be honest, there's absolutely nothing in it in terms of the finances, and you can see that there. So in terms of payback, you're looking at 3.5 years, nudging up to 3.6 when you're building the disaggregation costs. Disaggregation costs are predominantly where you've got to split an organisation. So because we've already got 2 unitaries effectively, we've got 2 upper tier, effectively, because we've got the county and we've got Derby City delivering those core upper tier services. We haven't got to disaggregate that many costs, but what we have got in option A1 and B1 is a splitting of a district boundary. So we have got to disaggregate. If that was the preferred option, you would be disaggregating Amber Valley, and that would bring some costs with it. That's why they're slightly higher. That's the only difference between the options. So just to summarise that, £44 million a year annual savings. They peak in year 6. Up to £65 million in implementation costs, which start in year 1 and assumed to be incurred by year 3. Realisation of savings start in year 1, be maximised by year 6. And it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out that we've had to pump prime the implementation costs. So we will need to fund those in the early years, and that's going to have to come from existing resources. That's been identified as a risk. And at the moment, the Section 151 Officers Work Stream is working through what that funding requirement work looks like and how the money is going to be divvied up, which you can imagine is a really easy conversation to have across the county. In all cases, payback's just over 3 years. Options A1 and B1, as I've just said, slightly higher because of disaggregation. So, Matt mentioned financial sustainability, and what we've done is we thought, well, payback's great, that's easy, we can all do a payback, we can all say we're going to make these savings and we're going to make these, it's going to cost us X to do it. But it's really important that we take that in the context of where we are at the moment and where we are as Derbyshire authorities at the moment. So we've built a medium-term financial plan. It's very high level, but we've had a go at building a medium-term financial plan to demonstrate that position. We've looked at the impact of council tax harmonisation on that plan, and I'll come to that in a little while. We've also looked at the level of reserves, and then we did a bit of a canter through the fair funding review and what that's likely to do, and a bit on balance sheet health. All will become clear. So I love a good spreadsheet. You all know I like a good spreadsheet with lots of numbers on. So what you can see there is in the top half, you've got where we are now. So the lines where it says districts and city and county, that's where we are at the moment. So that's all our budgets aggregated. We've then brought in the costs and the savings of regeneration, taking us down to the projected budget challenge. And then what we've done is we've taken the funding opportunities that arise as a result of local government reorganisation to reduce that down to the bottom line, which is the adjusted budget challenge. And so you can see there, by year 3, assuming that everything goes to plan, we would break even. So in summary, the forecast budget gap across Derbyshire is £41 million. I think what that does, it just indicates the scale of the challenge at the start of the process. And that's why we felt it was really important that we got that as part of the bid. Lee's going to come on to this in his slides later, but this isn't a panacea. We've all got budget gaps at the moment. We've all got deficits that we're going to carry into the new organisation. So we're not starting from zero. Council tax harmonisation I'm going to cover on a later slide. And as I said before, early years are marked by deficits before the savings kick in and we start to get some benefits of the transformation and the reorganisation. There is a steady improvement over time in the modelling. It does reflect the long-term benefits of reorganisation. And as I said earlier, the financial trajectory is broadly consistent across any of the options. The metrics that we ran showed that that the new organisations were likely to have fairly strong financial health outcomes when we benchmarked them against others of a similar size and stature. And one of the key indicators in criteria 2 is that debt would have to be managed locally. Our view is that we can manage the debt locally across Derbyshire. So we wouldn't need to ask for any additional funding for that. So council tax harmonisation, what is it? So I'm sitting here as somebody who's had to build the MTFP, so forgive me, I'm not a politician. The decision will be the new councils. It will be a decision, just like you take every January when we have the MTFP and you decide on the level of council tax. The decision on how the new councils harmonise will be a decision for the new council. So I just wanted to say that at the outset. But it is something that has to happen. So if you think about that strange report that I bring every March when you've got all those tables and council tax bands and parishes and precepts and all of those numbers, and that happens at all 9 of the billing authorities across Derbyshire, and they all are going to have to be brought in line at some point, and the time frame for doing that is 7 years. So within 7 years of the creation of the new authority, you will need parity on council tax. It does generate a substantial amount of additional income. It does. There's no point hiding behind that. And that will be something for the new councillors to consider in the first year that they demonstrate their new MTFPs. So opting for harmonisation that generates a lower yield than we've modelled does present a risk, and we've built that into our risk register. And harmonising at the highest rate is what we've built into the model. But there are variations on that, and we've also modelled, there were 7 options modelled, 3 that met the criteria that you won't exceed referendum limits, and referendum limits is that 3%, 5% that we have to stick to every year when we set the council tax, and they've all been modelled. So that's been built into the model for now. A little bit about Fair Funding Review. We expect the Fair Funding Review to contribute to improved financial sustainability over time, but I'll be honest, the precise scale of the benefits too uncertain at the time of writing, so we've got an idea of where we're all going to be. Initial modelling suggests that the Southern Unitary would get a quicker improvement than the Northern Unitary, but we've had no numbers from government at all, and we've not had any exemplifications either. So we took the view that that was too uncertain to build into the modelling. So we've got an idea that it will be beneficial, but we've not built that into the modelling. It was deemed too high risk. Needs are in the upper quartile compared to existing unitaries. And again, the modelling is suggesting that the south will have more growth, but the north will have a higher council tax per head. But very, very much up in the air, waiting for the settlement to come out in December to be able to confirm any of those figures. I mentioned reserves earlier. The estimate is there will be sufficient reserves across Derbyshire to fund the implementation costs and help the new councils withstand future shocks. But big rider time, we've not got a crystal ball, and unanticipated funding and expenditure pressures could adversely affect the position before the new councils are created in 2028. We have taken the view that it's only available reserves, so reserves that have been allocated for specific purposes or risks have been treated as unidentifiable because they will either roll over into the new organisation because they're long-term projects, or they will just transfer over. And I'm not going to go through that slide in detail because it is in the pack, but that's just highlighting some of the financial challenges that we've talked about, and some operationally that you will be aware of. And on the right-hand side, you'll see in the highlighted italics where we feel that we may need government support as part of this proposal that we're submitting. And I think that's my last slide. So over to you, Lee.
So implementation then. Clearly it's important to acknowledge the scale of what we're undertaking. It is huge. It is a major change programme, but there's lots and lots of diligent people involved in seeing this thing get delivered effectively in the interests of our communities. I'm absolutely confident in our team here, and I include officers and members in that statement. And I know that from the outset, we'll be clear about our priorities, which include continuity and stability for our residents and staff. Building and driving a shared culture, really, really important to us here, similar to our own. A one-team ethos rooted in public service, very, very important. Meaningful engagement with our staff throughout, that's what we've been doing right from day one. We know that they're the backbone of our success, and they're the ones that will get us to where we want to be. The integration of systems and data to enable smarter and more joined up services, and that strong financial oversight that Jane's just set out there from the outset. And it's this solid foundation from which we'll be able to transform further in the years ahead. In terms of risk management, as with anything of this scale, there's bound to be risks. We've heard some of this today, but we're not approaching this blindly. We've developed a comprehensive project risk register, and we're actively reviewing and managing those risks as we move forward. You can see some of these threats on the screen, but we're not naive about the risks. We see them clearly, but we also recognise the opportunities, and that's exactly the mindset needed to lead meaningful change. Effective risk management isn't just about playing defence. It's about facing threats head on and putting smart strategies in place to manage them. And at the same time, rigorously pursuing the opportunities. So it's about being bold and balanced, not just avoiding pitfalls, but unlocking potential. So, LGR then. We shouldn't see LGR as a silver bullet that fixes things just by reorganisation alone, because it won't. But as Jane said, we should also recognise that doing nothing and staying as we are as a system is no panacea either. The issues facing our two-tier system won't just go away. We know the unprecedented strain the current model's under, and we all know about the many councils that are struggling. And we hear a lot about services like adult social care, SEND and children's services consuming ever larger portions of our two-tier system budgets. My own personal conclusion is that something's got to give. This simply can't go on. It's not a sustainable position for the sector to be in. There's a growing need with a seemingly ever-reducing set of resources. And I'm quite comfortable being open and talking about my feelings and thoughts. I think it's important for me as Managing Director, particularly in this case, to do exactly that. And when that white paper first dropped last December, my immediate feelings were fear. I was scared. It was fear that an organisation that I felt so proud of, including the people in it, members and staff, and the culture that we built together over these past few years, I had fear that that was at risk of being lost. But if I'm honest, I think that's the wrong way to look at it. No matter how proud I am of our organisation, we don't operate in a vacuum. We're part of a wider system. So I need to be objective and look at the end users, the reason why we exist at all, and that's our communities. What is, or what could be, the impact on them? So I've reflected long and hard, like many of us will have, on this current situation, the flaws of the two-tier system, my own experiences in senior positions this past 20 years, and trying to grasp what really is on offer through LGR. Having done so, I've become quite passionate that LGR shouldn't be seen only as structural change. Personally, I've got little interest in spending the next 2+ years of my career just rearranging deck chairs, only for the vision to end there. If I were to use an analogy of winning the Tour de France as what I see on offer here, then reorganisation is just about building the bike. It's just right at the very beginning, far from the finish line. So when I consider LGR, I see the opportunity beyond reorganisation. That's what I've been getting excited about, the real prize that's on offer. And I just hope everybody can see that. I see an opportunity to build something new. An opportunity to create a slick, single-tier council that can pull all the levers, resulting in positive change at pace. Working in a system that's not just reactive, but proactive. I see an opportunity to join up local government services in a way that enables earlier, smarter, and more effective intervention, preventing needs before they emerge or escalate. By bringing together critical functions under one roof, breaking down organisational silos, designing services around people's needs, rather than departments and various organisations. I see a joined-up approach that can identify vulnerable households earlier, a joined-up approach that enables targeted support that reduces the need later, where services like leisure, adult social care, children's services and public health are designed to work better together to create healthier and more active and happier communities, by being better at tackling obesity, loneliness, social exclusion, inactivity, and so on. I see adult social care and housing more aligned, vulnerable individuals being supported more holistically and effectively through adapted housing, supported living, or rapid rehousing for hospital discharge. An integrated model that allows the council to respond at pace with a single point of accountability and shared intelligence across services, equipping our services to tackle the root causes of the need in the first place, needs such as poor housing, unemployment, social isolation, rather than simply trying to manage the consequences. These are the real things that I see are on offer beyond reorganisation. And that leads me to think, without reorganisation, I find it difficult to see the level of transformation that's required ever happening. So about 6 years ago, I experienced a really proud moment in this chamber, not because of the scale of the achievement, but for who it benefited. These were people within our community who arguably needed our support the most, children in care and care leavers. Councillor Thacker and Councillor Dale, leader and deputy at the time, very kindly praised me and the report I brought to council. And a report that in some way at least aimed to help these children in care and care leavers. And that was a proud day. And I know the praise that was given was because of the benefit it would bring to those children. Both Councillor Thacker and Councillor Dale, both extremely supportive of that initiative. But I can't help thinking that at least in some part, that praise may also have been given in recognition of the effort it had taken to bring this forward in the first place. However beneficial that proposition, and however worthy the recipients, the truth is, this was a small-scale intervention in the grand scheme of things. An intervention that just should happen, business as usual, as soon as it was dreamt up. The reality is something else. To get this relatively simple initiative in place across Derbyshire took in the region of 30 meetings. Approaching 20 of those were formal. I can't quantify the hours spent, but I know it happened over a period of roughly 18 months. Not something you'd readily describe as transformation with pace and certainty. And this is not a criticism of any person or organisation, but it's just a small glimpse of the reality of a system we operate in. The system, quite simply, made it too hard to do. Sadly, I could cite lots of other similar stories, and these would just be mine. Stories of initiatives that have been extremely slow to happen, or even fail to happen at all, because of this two-tier system. Often siloed in thinking, with multiple organisations and differing budgets and priorities, hindering progress and hindering pace of change. As we've heard today, the road to reimagination is not easy. We know this. Transition costs are real. The upfront investment is going to be significant. But the cost of transition, in my opinion, will be dwarfed by the cost of inaction in the longer run. So the question I've been asking myself is, will reorganisation make it easier to deliver that true prize? I think it will. Delay in action will not make the challenges of today disappear. In fact, the longer we wait, the more we risk. So the second question, if not now, then when? On the run up to this council meeting, I've been chatting with lots of people. One person said to me a couple of days ago, "You're talking about a vision, but you can't guarantee this will happen." My response to him is simple: no, I can't, and nor can anyone. But if I use the analogy again from earlier, winning the Tour de France, if we recognise that reorganisation is like building that bike, it's just right at the beginning, ensuring every component is fit for purpose, and the trophy, or the real prize, is the new future we're striving to reach, a system that works better for our people and communities, then it's that vision and ambition that will propel us forward. It's on us to relentlessly pursue what's possible. It's the determination to lead this, to act with tenacity, drive, enthusiasm and ownership, to embrace this responsibility and to strive for better. The importance of this can't be overestimated, in my opinion, and without it, our success will be limited. So, no case for change can offer absolute guarantees, but progress has never been built on certainty alone. Local government reform is no exception. Visionary thinking and ambition is vital. We all know that not every detail can be guaranteed, but without vision, the only thing we guarantee is stagnation, or limiting ourselves to rearranging those deck chairs. Vision and ambition aren't make-believe. It's what makes progress possible. Vision and ambition is how we build what doesn't exist yet. So if we are going to pursue LGR, we have to see and then seek the true potential of LGR. And for that, vision and ambition are absolute necessities. Thank you. We're happy to take any questions, Chair.
Right then, members, I'd like to really just thank Lee and all the officers concerned at the effort they've put into this presentation. I think it's been really well done and well received. Right, so I'm now going to open the floor for questions to officers. Yes, just questions to officers. Councillor Shipman.
I've got 4 questions. Is that all right, Chair?
Yeah, that's fine, as long as they don't repeat each other.
Who am I asking?
Officers.
Questions?
Yeah.
So it was mentioned during the presentation that the representation is going to drop to 16 councils, I think it were. What's your opinion on it dropping from, just to use Claycross and Tupton as a county ward, for example, which currently has 9 councillors, if you take into account district and then the 1 county councillor. Surely that's a drop in democratic representation if you're dropping from 9 to what would be 2 in this new structure. Do you not think?
Is that for you, Lee, or do you want to come back? I think really idea of this bit, just for technical questions, if you want to do them for us to answer, you will.
I want to get the MD's opinion on whether I think that's
I don't know, is it physically?
reduces the democratic representation or not.
Well, I'm happy to answer, Chair, if that's okay.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, obviously, I'm an officer. I'm not a politician. Politicians will have a view, of course. Everybody in this room has a view. My opinion is, so we saw the figures on screen. We saw the current number of county councillors. We saw the current and the people they represent, their electorate. And we saw the district numbers. And I'd say this new unit is pitched somewhere between those two. And I can't say that a reduction in members isn't going to have an impact, but everything I've just said today in my bit is trying to express and demonstrate that need for change, And overall, some of my frustration has been that we've got 447 councillors and 10 authorities across Derbyshire. And if we're trying to impact and influence a change for the whole of Derbyshire, currently we've got to satisfy 10 organisations and 447 members. I'm not saying that's bad or good, that's just fact. The picture I paint and the opportunity that I see through LGR alters that, and some of that is that consequence.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. The next three I've got are all financial. I don't know if you want to get in the dock, Jane. So when the council tax is harmonised, and you're saying that I presume the modelling has been based on the highest one, I think that's what the presentation said. What increase does that mean to North East Derbyshire residents? If we go with the highest harmonisation, how much in monetary terms should we expect annually extra onto North East Derbyshire residents' council tax than they are currently paying if we were to harmonise in that way?
Oh, here we go. So I haven't got the exact numbers here today, but I have got the modelling, which I'm happy to share with members. It's important to remember this is not a decision for this council. It will be a decision for the new council, and they will need to take it in the context of what their budget looks like. So when you take a decision in this chamber, and I encourage you to go to the highest because we've got a budget gap, whoever the Section 151 officer is for the new Southern and Northern Unitary Authorities will be recommending a council tax increase and a harmonisation pathway depending on what their MTFP looks like. What we've done is we've modelled at the most optimistic, because that is generally what people have done in the past, but the new council may well decide that they want to go to the lowest. They may decide they want to go to the weighted average, in which case the income that would be generated from it would be much lower. But I have done all the modelling for all 7 options, so I'm more than happy to share that. I just want to be really clear that it's modelling at this stage. We can only put a figure in based on the assumptions that we're making, and it will be a decision for the new council.
You're on.
Oh, thank you, Chair. The other question I've got is, how much debt do all the councils that we would essentially be joining as part of an organisation, how much would the total debt be for, let's say, the North Derbyshire Council in the worst case scenario option out of all 4?
So the total debt, it's a tricky one because the majority of the debt is HRA debt. So you'll know when I talk to you about general fund and HRA debt is linked to the properties. So I haven't got the exact figure to hand, but I think it's in the submission, so I'll go and have a quick flick through and I'll let you have it. 560 million's jumping into my head, but let me get the exact figure. It is in here.
Thank you, Chair. The last one is, what independent financial impact assessment's been done on the 4 models that's been presented to government in this submission?
The impact assessment that's been done overall. There's a risk register that's been done financially. KPMG have been part of that, but have also independently QA'd it, and we've also used specialists, independent specialists, to work with us QAing the financial sustainability works. So there's been all of the Section 151 officers, so all 9 Section 151 officers, KPMG's QA team, and then independent consultants as well. And then we've documented that in the financial risk register, which you'll find, I think, page 61, something like that.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to all of the officers for all of the work on the presentation, and also all of the work you've been doing throughout the past several months in terms of all of the meetings and everything else going on, because I know I've certainly heard that North East Derbyshire have been, punching above the weight in terms of, being part of that process. So all of your involvement is really important. So thank you for that. I like the analogy of the children in care and care leavers sort of strategy. I thought that was very well put. Wasn't as keen on the Tour de France analogy. For some reason, I've got this really troubling image of Lee in Lycra in my head, and I just can't quite get it out. But anyway. A couple of financial-based questions, mainly I think for Jane. Sorry again. It strikes me from the presentation as though what we're essentially doing is selling to residents that this is about creating efficiencies, But actually, it looks like for most residents, they'll be expected to pay more council tax for it. Essentially, that's what it's looking like, because all of the savings are basically just going to go on existing budget shortfalls. And obviously there'll be harmonisation. I'm not quite clear. I think we are, obviously you're going to get back to us with information, but I think we are the second highest already behind Bowls over in our area. So our residents' council tax might not go up that much, but others around the county will. The danger for me is that if we were doing nothing, those budget gaps would still be there, and those organisations, both the county and we as districts, would still have to find ways of meeting those gaps. The problem around doing this process is there is a danger it takes all organisations' eye off the ball in terms of making those savings anyway. We could be making those savings plus more through doing this process and actually giving residents, you know, a sort of golden handshake by, you know, we've delivered more efficiency and we're going to reduce council tax. So how do we, I suppose the first question is, how do we ensure that we don't just use this as an excuse to sort of, you know, coast into the new arrangement and just, you know, we've got a reorganisation plan that's going to take care of those savings issues, because we do have to continue, you know, efficiency isn't a sort of one-off thing, it's a continual drive. You continually have to be looking for new ways to be more efficient. So that's the first question. And then the second one was, you referenced the sort of HS2 analogy, which again was quite troubling. Of the £65 million cost, what are where are the risks around cost escalation? So where are the sort of HS2 risks, if you like, of, you know, of where that could go badly wrong? And maybe if you could just outline how much of that is predicated on use of consultants to do some of this work, and how much is going to be done internally by our own staff, of which obviously, you know, we should have a lot of staff that can be able to devote time to this. So thanks very much, Chair.
Okay.
Crikey, if I forget any of this, Councillor Dale, just pick me up on the bits that I forget. But I'll try and I've been through all of those decisions in my head 100 times, and you're absolutely right. So let me deal with the council tax one first, because that's the simplest. We're smack bang in the middle. So if we went with a weighted average, ours wouldn't change as the bottom line. We're smack bang in the middle in terms of the northern unitaries. But you're right, it just depends where that line's drawn. And to the point that I made to Councillor Shipman, it's very much dependent on what that first budget looks like. So, you know, if all the savings come in and the implementation costs are lower and pressures aren't great, I mean, that's fantasy land. We all know that the pressures aren't going away. As Lee said, it's not a silver bullet. Then you would make your decision based on that. You would make a different decision if you've got a big hole in your budget. No different to what we do every year when we approve our MTFP. So that's the council tax bit. In terms of the why, you're absolutely right. Those budget gaps are what they are. We're incurring £65 million to get to a £44 million annual saving. That equates to 167 million over a 6-year period. So you can see the benefit there. The bigger the organisation, the easier it is to withstand shocks. Now, I've got no experience of that. I've only ever worked in a district council. But having spoken to colleagues who've been through that process, they've all pretty much said the bigger the budget, the easier it is to withstand shocks, notwithstanding the fact that you're inheriting some really, really challenging services in terms of children's services, social care, highways, housing, etc. But the reality of it is, from a financial point of view, it is a bit of a punt. You can't guarantee that those savings aren't going to be less. You can't guarantee that those costs aren't going to be more. What we've tried to do is build as much resilience into the modelling as we can in terms of the timings of the savings to give us every chance of being able to achieve them once the new organisation has been set up. And whilst it looks very much like it's a financial decision, and that's very much the way I've had to approach it, that's been my bit. Lee's point is this is bigger than just the finances. It's bigger than just what that would look like. But all the points that you make are absolutely valid. You know, we would be making those savings. I'll be bringing you an MTFP in January that will have a gap in it, like every other year, and I'll be saying this is how we plan to plug that gap. Now, the final question was risks.
Risk of cost escalation.
Thank you, Matt. So Appendix 2 is a really, really useful document to read. And what that does is it identifies the rationale and the assumptions that we've taken. And then where we felt that that generates a specific risk, we've then built that into the financial risk register. So you'll see, for example, delivery risk is in the finance risk register because for me, that absolutely is a delivery risk. You know, this is a huge undertaking. We're going to be creating two brand new organisations of scale, and to expect that we're going to do all of those changes in year one is not going to happen, which is why we've tried to mirror the savings into later years. So you'll see a lot of the savings are in years 3 and 4 because of that very reason. So we've tried to build in as much of that as we can, but yet it absolutely is a risk, and we've modelled that through in terms of where we think the big risks are. For me, the big risks are probably around staffing, terms and conditions, IT. IT is the biggie for me. You know, that is a massive undertaking trying to get everybody onto one system. We've got 9 at the moment. We've got 9 finance systems, 9 housing systems, you know, and we're looking at trying to align all of those. So for me, IT would be the biggest risk. I'm just going to wait, yeah, just in case.
Thank you, Jane. Right, Councillor Fawcett.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all the officers that's done that presentation today. I echo what Councillor Dale has said there, and probably most importantly on the issue of Lycra and the CEO. However, moving on to a little bit more of it, because I know as well that you've done this in addition to the jobs that you have to discharge ordinarily, and that's a massive workload. And I just want to come on there. There's sort of 2 questions I have, which are assets and finance. And I think where this comes into play from a politician's point of view is this issue with 2-tier local authority and people's perspectives. I don't know if anyone else has ever had the similar issue of not just having knocked on the door and been told you're all the same, but you knock on a door and you say, hello, I'm here for the council, and they say, well, you've only just had one of those elections. And the confusion that's there, and then you say, have you got any issues? Yeah, this piece of land here, and then you have to go back and say, that's the other council, that's not us. And I think in terms of like enfranchisement there, that has been quite a serious barrier, especially when you're trying to get things like pride of place and get people really involved in their local communities. So when I think of those moments, I think about sort of the land ownership. And I know there was some questions at the last meeting about the Asset Management Board and how we manage our assets, which is quite an important question. Now, I understand at some point there's going to be a sort of freeze date of if there are any disposals of assets that are going to happen. But I wonder if in the meantime, and this is a question as much for officers and perhaps portfolio holders as well, if they want to comment later on, is about the sort of the values we're going to apply in this sort of next phase until this deal goes through, which is about how those disposals are going to happen. I know there's a lot of opportunity at the minute for us to really enfranchise parishes to take more ownership, community ownership of land and make that available. So I'd be interested to know how we're going to deal with that process as this progresses. And so that's on the asset front and really trying to work with parishes in that time, because I'd hate for this to be a time when it's a free-for-all on assets, and I don't think anyone in this chamber, including the officers, necessarily want that. And then secondly, just touches on the debt thing again, because I know there's a lot of information there on finance, and it, as you say, Jane, earlier about the housing revenue accounts, there's a lot of, when we talk about debt, there's debt secured on assets, housing revenue, borrowing that we've taken out, and then we've got sort of any insecure debts which other authorities might have as well that we might not necessarily have, and then, like you say, deficits going forward. And if there's any disproportion that you've seen amongst other authorities, not, you know, obviously notwithstanding the management, any management that's happened here. So I'd be interested to just learn a little bit more about that in broad terms. But when you mentioned about council tax as well, obviously that is a point of concern. I understand what Councillor Dale's saying there, but there is also an opportunity to feed back, is there not, to government, to, as part of this process, to forecast that issue from local government to say there is a risk of that. Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
going to take those in reverse order if I can, because I'm going to hand over to Matt for the assets bit. So starting with the council tax, yeah, absolutely right, and we've built that into our finance risk register, because the modelling's one thing and the modelling's great and it tells a particular story, but the reality of it is the new members of the two new organisations are going to have to make that decision, and they're not making that decision just on finances. They'll be very aware and cognizant of what they need to do to balance their budgets, but they've got to think about their residents as well. So absolutely, and we've flagged that as a risk in our risk register for that very reason, so you're right to mention that. In terms of the debt, Derbyshire's actually in a pretty good space. The big gap, the big difference between the Derbyshire authorities is the ones that have got housing revenue accounts and the ones that haven't. And you're quite right, I've always perceived housing revenue debt as good debt in a strange sort of way. It's a little bit like a mortgage. We've got assets that are worth significantly more than the debt that we actually carry. And that's the big difference. So some of our fellow districts and boroughs who haven't got HRAs have got very little debt. I think the debt position in Derbyshire's healthy. And I don't think we'll have any problem. It's less about the debt and more about can you service the interest on that debt is the important thing, and that's something that we're looking closely at with regards to HRAs as we have more and more pressure with regulation. So I think I can give you some assurances around the debt position in Derbyshire. It's certainly a lot more healthy than some of our colleagues in some of the southern authorities who've got significant levels of debt that they're struggling to service. I'm going to let Matt pick up on the assets point, but just to give a little bit of context around how this will work over the next few years, because you're absolutely right. Nobody wants fire sales, nobody wants random decisions, nobody wants things to just, descend into chaos. So at the point that the government make a decision, they will issue something called a structural changes order, an SCO. And that will then put into law that the new organisation takes all those big decisions. So from that point, the new organisation will take those big decisions, and that would include assets. Prior to that, something that we're working on in the Section 151 Officers work stream is trying to establish some guiding principles ahead of that, so that we're making sensible decisions collectively. And it's something that we're really keen to pull together as 10 organisations and say, let's just be sensible about how we take these decisions and what we're doing. We've got to have business as usual. We've got another 2 years of running this organisation, or potentially 3, who knows how long. We don't want to be stopping making decisions that are sensible and right for this organisation and this district, but at the same time we need to have half an eye on that. So the guiding principles will hopefully be a voluntary arrangement that will certainly help address some of those things, and I'm going to let Matt talk about assets.
Thanks, Jane. Just on Jane's point, on the assets and the disposals, so how that's done at the moment, officers are led largely by the strategic asset management plan, which has been developed by members, and we take that on board and deliver through that. So at the right time, reviewing that strategy is probably the right thing to do. Key point being at the right time. I think it's probably a little bit premature at the moment. Going back to Jane's point about structural changes orders, absolutely, and there's a timetable for that, but also what we need to be clear on here is us submitting doesn't mean it's going to happen. There's a decision to be made by the Secretary of State before anything happens. So when that decision happens, it's difficult, and what we can't do is take our eye off the ball in terms of business as usual. So we'll be working towards the existing policies, not just asset management, existing policies and strategies that we've got in place. Yes, we need to be minded of LGR. However, we've got to get on and deliver, and it's not all about LGR, and the timescales might go out. The decision might be taken not to do it in Derbyshire. So we've just got to be prepared for all of those scenarios and just make sure all our strategies aren't the eggs in the LGR basket, I suppose. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. My question's for Mrs Dethick. It's largely been covered already by Councillor Shipman and Councillor Dale, the question, but I'll ask it anyway, and it's to do with council tax harmonisation. It says in the statement on the slide, council tax harmonisation presents an opportunity to generate additional income. that can only mean, unless it means something different, to put taxes up for residents. And it's a worrying statement because it could easily have said something like council tax harmonisation presents an opportunity to give better value, to reduce taxes for council taxpayers. It could have said that instead. It already looks like things are being pushed in the direction of putting taxes up in a hidden period of time. Amid the confusion, we're having a reorganisation. Oh, by the way, this has happened. Now, I know you say we're in the middle, North East Derbyshire, and I understand that, but for the whole area, the north of Derbyshire, there will be winners and losers. But if we present it as an opportunity to generate additional income, there will be more losers than winners. So it's a concern. It's the presentation that's a concern. If you can take that as a question. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
I'm just waiting for my mic. I will, if that's okay, because I can just give some clarification around that point. So the modelling is purely a financial model. So it's had to make an assumption about what the new organisations may do or may not do about council tax. That's why I've wanted to be really, really clear that it will be a decision that will be taken by the new organisation, the two new councils, in the context of what their MTFPs look like. If everybody decided, if the two new councils decided to harmonise and go as fast as they can, it is an income generation opportunity for sure. If the councils decide to take the route that politically that you don't want to do that, it will generate less income. So that's been modelled in, and it's been flagged as a risk depending on where the new council decides it's going to pitch its decision around harmonising the council tax. And we are, you're right, we're dead bang in the middle. So depending on which option you take, up, down, stay the same.
Councillor Weatherall.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And first of all, I'd like to thank Councillor Barker and Lee for the inclusive way that they've sort of run the process, if you like, up to and including today. It's been greatly appreciated, certainly from our quarter. I mean, the way that you've described this, and I can see this is a massive, massive transformation programme with some massive risks and some big opportunities as well. My question is about those risks and opportunities, and actually linked to some of the things that have been said before, which is public perception of this. And the transparency around all of this is going to be critical, because we need to communicate that this is big with massive risks but massive opportunities. And my first question, if I may, Chair, is around the risks and the benefits realisation, because you've identified those risks in a high level in this report. But my question is about exactly how those risks are going to be managed. How is that going to be communicated? And then the opposite of that is, how is the benefits realisation going to be managed and again communicated? Because I think those are critical. So that's the first question. My second question is a budget question, really. So some authorities, and I think it's including Derbyshire County Council, currently have things like children's social care and SEND taken out of their budget position. And the government, central government, is underwriting that. How is that going to be managed, and has that been factored into the finances? And sorry, there is a third question, Chair, if I may, and this is around things like SEND and children's social care. The Children's Act was scheduled to be published this autumn. It's now been pushed back to next spring. The implications of the Children's Act, particularly around SEND, is massive, and again will impact on this. Do we have any early warnings around what's going to be in that Act that may well impact on your financial modelling? Thank you, Chair.
I'd like coming in first, if that's all right, Councillor Weatherall. And you're welcome, very welcome, about the run-up to this and trying to share information, because it's key to my response in a way, because I think overall where this has been pitched wrongly through central government, because I don't think there's been enough made. So we are still asking about council tax, which is important, But I don't think it's a choice between paying nothing by staying as we are and it'll all be all right. I see that trajectory, and I think we've not made enough of the trajectory we're on. So it's not a simple choice as do we want to put council tax up or not. These services that are struggling in this two-tier system are on a trajectory of unsustainability. That's got to be met somehow. So whether LGR happens or it don't, how are we going to meet that? This gives us a chance of doing that. So I think in terms of that risk and opportunity, the risks we will manage proficiently and technically through a process of risk management. The opportunity is what needs selling, and it's what needs pushing, and it's what needs driving. And that comes down to leadership. And I say that in the sense from officers and elected members, we've got to strive for that. Because if we're not striving for those opportunities, we'll end up with deck chairs being moved. And that's it. So I take it upon myself, I feel it's incumbent upon me to try wherever I possibly can, in any of these meetings we've had this past year, to try and get people who perhaps aren't yet seeing that vision and don't see the end goal, these fewer councillors, fewer senior managers and the rest of it. It's just about creating something to build from, and it's what we see beyond that. So if anything, I've gone a bit round the houses there, but we need to push more the opportunities, but the true strategic, visionary opportunities that's on offer. Because what's on offer isn't just less councillors, fewer senior managers. That's not the goal. It's about creating a place that can act at pace, make a decision and do it. That's what's on offer, and do it in the interest of our communities in an efficient way. I'll let Jane come back in because there's a couple of budget questions there. Just on the Children's Act, I don't specifically know what's in that or what's likely to be in that. I've read various things, but I'm not in a position to answer here and now. I'm more than happy to hand over if anybody else is up to speed on that. But other than that, Jane obviously will come in and answer those budget questions. Not sure if that was the answer you were looking for, Councillor Weatherall. Happy to go further if you need me to, please. Yeah, the mechanism for communicating. So internally, we've been really good at sharing with our staff throughout a really balanced picture on this. You know, we're not wanting to set airs racing, but we're also not wanting people to be scared or overly certain. Matt picked up on a point there. We've been playing this right down the middle and trying to keep business as usual until we know something different. That's what we have to do. And there are risks and there are threats, but there are opportunities too. And so internally, we'll keep that message going. Whatever happens beyond this meeting, we've already shared with all our staff that case for change. We've already shared the fact that it's here. We've shared the fact that we're going to be doing a presentation, so we don't hide anything from our staff. After our employee liaison groups, that Nigel and myself meet with staff and we talk through it. Engagement with trade unions, we've been doing all that. What happens beyond this, and what I'm really conscious of, and I do take that upon myself, along with others, is to keep that communication, and it's a bit like a dripping tap until it becomes the truth. You've heard it so many times that then it's all everybody's truth, and that is, don't settle for rearranging deck chairs, push it. So we'll be pushing that message beyond this with all those other councils that are involved with us on this collaboration. And I'll be honest, it's not that they're not thinking that way, but let's make that front and centre, because we're trying to sell this to our communities in a way that is, what does it really mean to them? Because the society that I envisage is potentially better than the one we've got. And for our communities, that's got to be a good thing. That's what I see, and we need to push that more. I'll let Jane come in on that budget question, though, Councillor Weatherall.
Send deficits, absolutely, yeah. So it's a real headache for my colleagues at the county and at the city. And you quite rightly pointed out what's happening at the moment is it's being underwritten. It's called a statutory override. the government have extended the statutory override to April 28, but that's clearly not a long-term solution. And it's catastrophic financially for those organisations. There's no doubt about that, and that's across the country. So we've included that in our financial risks and our government asks. So in the table in the finance section where it talks about risks and government asks, one of them is specifically about that and about a request that the statutory override continues until at least such a point that these organisations have made the transition and are stable, because for it to happen at the same time as the new organisation being created, that would be a challenge. So we've flagged that as part of our proposal. And in terms of the estimates with regards to the changes to the SEND reforms, we've modelled on status quo. So we've modelled on what we know at the moment. We've not built in any additional, because it's a bit like the fair funding reforms, we just don't know.
Thank you. Councillor Dales, is still a good question,
if that's okay. Just on the SND reforms as well. My understanding in the fair funding review, there is a statement in relation to our budget settlement this year that it refers to working with councils to bring down the SEND deficits or something like that. So there is some loose wording around an intention to write off or something about the deficit. So it possibly may come sooner than that, although it could, as you say, easily be kicked down the road. The question was actually just about a colleague in Erewash has highlighted that their council paper refers to a £500,000 budget allocation towards joint working on LGR. Are you aware of that, and why is that not featuring our report?
So view. My view is we've got sufficient reserves should we need to use them, and that's not been agreed yet. So my view would be I would bring that as part of the MTFP when we know a little bit more. Colleagues at Erewash have taken a view that they want to make an assumption earlier. So, but my view is we don't know what we're going to need yet, and we don't know what our proportion would be. So it felt too soon to me to be asking for a supplementary estimate or a movement from reserves at this time.
Thank you.
Right then, members. I'm now going to open the floor to debate, and I'm first going to bring in Councillor Barker.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Chair. I've compared Lee's speeches to Ted Lasso in the past, and I think it's still coming with that. In fact, I thought he was going to burst into a Jamie Webster song. Someone's got to give. I don't know if anybody's heard that one, but I was looking forward to that. Lee, that would have been good. But again, thanks to Lee, Matt and Jane. I think not just for doing the presentation. The amount of work that's gone in over the last year into this has been phenomenal. Honestly, it's been massive, and it's took up a lot of time and effort, and I really can't stress that enough. I think it's been an epic, I think that's a good word, an epic undertaking, and then one that I think we're all pleased to see to come some sort of conclusion. But this is only the start. But to get to this far and putting this document together has been massive. I think I said at the start of this process, when we first heard about it from government, that I were disappointed and angry. I think that's what I said at one of the council meetings, but we did. We thought it were better to be within the process and try and get the best outcome for the people of North East Derbyshire. And that involvement has been immense, I've got to say that. There's been loads of meetings, conversations, you've been phoning people up, I've had conversations, and it's evident, I think, because one or two have said it, well, they've said this before, it'll not happen, we've gone down this road. But I'm fairly certain, and I've asked ministers, well, I've asked through Louise, she's asked ministers whether it's still happening, and it is. So it's not something that's going to go away, and I know Lee spelled it out, but I believe this reorganisation is just the start of the process. It really, really is, and we really do need that clear vision. I think Lee spelled it out, and we want to make local government better for people. That's what this is all about. Throughout it all, I think I've kept you in the loop. I've tried to. It's been difficult because sometimes you assume everybody knows what you know because things are moving that fast. But we've tried to do that and keep as progression. We've had presentations and let you know where we are. It's been a long road, I think, but we've made with real purpose, I think. We've heard about all the changing structures, and I think it's once in a generation change. And we need to think how we serve our communities and the people that vote for us. It really is. It's not just about drawing lines on a map. I think one or two of us have had fun with that, but it's about how does local government work for people? Because, and I know it's a bit of a joke, but something's got to give. To carry on as we are is not an option. I'll not get into the politics of what's happening at the county council. I don't think it's anybody, it's just a general cutback of funds. The demand's gone up. We've got to do something. So I think to design services that we need joined up, seamless if you like, and they've got to be built around real people, I think, and the real journeys that they through their lives. So it's all about that sort of stuff. I think it's fair to say there is some financial resilience in that we owe, you know, to try and use public money better, sustainably and more transparent, not just today but in the future. And I know there's a logic there. There's not going to be massive cuts to council tax. We can't try and say that, but we've got to provide the services that the society needs. How the new unitary authority does that, that's up to them, and how much they want to put into that. Again, that's been spelled out from Jane. It's for the new councils to work that out, what's the priority. And again, it's that who's responsible for what thing, that's also an issue. I think that's been spelled out by others. This is where I'm going to give Martin his chance to come in, Alex. Because I think we knew that once we got a mayor, that the current structures weren't going to be sustainable. That somehow we've got to have that was Martin's argument, and I hoped that he were wrong, but he were proved he were right, wasn't he? So I think that's where we are, because we've got to feed in. Now we've got a mayor and MK, we've got to feed into that a lot better, because the structure as it is, it's leaving parts of the county out of that. The districts are not getting a big say and all that sort of stuff. So the unitaries will help with feeding into the mayoral authority. Going back to the document, I think it is a massive document, and congratulations to anybody that's read it all. I think you've done very well. You deserve a Blue Peter badge. I think, do they still have them? But I think I just refer to a couple of statements in it, and I think just to read them out, because it says in there, it's an opportunity to create a brighter and more responsive future, ensuring a more prosperous tomorrow. It's an opportunity to unify and coordinate social care, and most importantly for me, it's a chance to sharpen focus on well-being and prevention, where we can better tackle health inequalities. I think you spelled that out, Lee. It's about where all the bodies working together. So it's an ambition of prevention rather than having to spend loads of money on crisis care and crisis provision at the sharp end. If we can stop it happening in the first place, through all that example you said, well, one of them, where if we spend money at that end and stop people going into crisis, it's got to be a lot better. Because at the moment, we're just in that downward spiral. Going back to the options, I think it has been spelled out, but we did start with 15 and all different shapes and sizes. I think it was soon we decided to come to the north-south split to meet the 500,000 population that seemed to be a thing. I think this led to a slogan, large enough to cope and small enough to care. That was mine, Lee, that. It was. But somebody changed it from KPMG, some smart person. But I still think mine were best. I don't know what it is now. It's somewhat similar anyway, isn't it? but anyway, the main debate were about where does Amber Valley sit within it. Are they in the north, all of it in the north, all of it in the south? And while some authorities preferred that, others concluded there should be a third option of splitting Amber Valley somewhere, which allowed Derby to grow a bit, because that seemed to be a pressure within from the conversations that Derby were constrained with its boundaries, it needed to get a bit bigger. So that were one of them, and that were initially called option C, which is now called option 1A, A1. I keep getting them mixed up now. And these three options were consulted on. And after that consultation, there were another option suggested, which is now option D, which was option D, is now B1. I think the main thing to say is, as has been spelled out by Matt, there's not much to choose between any of those options, using the KPMG stuff and all the other thing. But personally, and we've been close to this as anybody, with others and talking to other people and everything, I believe option A1 is the right way forward, because it starts on the foundation of option A, and we think A1 takes all what's good in option A and improves it. And here in Amber Valley members and residents, I think option A1 is a thoughtful, strategic tweak that reflects both the technical data and the lived experience of the people in that area. It redraws the boundary slightly through Amber Valley, using parishes as boundaries, and A1 keeps the financial strength and service delivery of option A. It goes further, really aligning more with the government criteria and the day-to-day realities of those communities in the south of Amber Valley. Some of the benefits of this slight modification, I think, include the southern unitary will have fewer geographic constraints, giving Derby City a bit more room to grow, especially over in the west, northwest. It'll be a better balance in population, so council tax base and the number of older residents, and the gross value added, which I can fully explain to everybody that wants to ask me, is essentially, I reckon, you've told me 3 times, Lee, haven't you, but I've still not got it, is the economic output of an area. And I'm informed, and that's what KPMG and all them people have looked at, it makes it, equalises it fairer across the two new authorities. But like I say, it's not just about numbers, that's not. It recognises the strong social and cultural ties between southern Amber Valley and Derby City. It reflects how people actually live, where they work and shop and stuff. It gives those leaning towards Derby City a voice in that future, because they'll vote for the councillors on that unitary. But it also allows people in the north of Amber Valley to vote for the councillors in the northern unitary, where they have got more of a say. So that, you know, more of a feeling of pride of place and all that sort of stuff. So I think A1, it's not a compromise, I think it's an evolution. It's like a nuanced community, that's not right, nuanced community surface sensitive adjustment. It balances the technical side with the human side, because I think that's within this document. It's not just about KPMG doing number crunching. We've got to know how people live and work and what their experiences are. KPMG are doing it on a computer. We're doing it because we live here. It addresses concerns. It boosts credibility. And I think it's more likely to win support from stakeholders and government. I think it's a people-first proposal. And it does make a case for a brighter, more connected future. And so with all that in mind, I recommend that we support option A1 with a caveat that we'll listen to and reflect on anything that's said today in this meeting. But I think we'll run 2 minds whether to actually do a formal motion, but I will do and I think we've got it on the screen somewhere, Sarah. So I'd like to move that the council recommends to Cabinet that the proposal for local government reorganisation in Derbyshire's case for change is approved and submitted to government on or before the 28th of November 2025, with option A as the base case, supported by modification A1 as the preferred boundary option. Thank you.
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you. So we've got a motion proposed and seconded. I'm opening the floor for debate on this. Anybody have anything they want to add? Councillor Hancock.
Thank you, Chair. One of the things that came across while we had the presentation and what the leader has just said, we had some quite passionate speeches and words like fear, aspiration came into the equation. And of course, when you're dealing with emotions, logic goes out of the window and we get a less balanced perspective. The leader's just mentioned it's people first, but I don't actually think what we've got on offer is people first at all. Local government reorganisation should only proceed where it demonstrably strengthens both service delivery and democratic accountability. On the evidence we have in front of us, this proposal does neither. At present, we have a representational ratio of roughly one councillor to 1,500 electors. Under the unitary model, this will move to approximately one councillor to over 5,000 electors. That is not an incremental adjustment, it is a fundamental dilution of representation. It means larger wards, diminished resident access, and a significant reduction in the ability of members to act as effective advocates, scrutineers and community leaders. No administrative efficiency can compensate for that loss of democratic proximity. Reorganisation should also be people-centred, not structural-centred. Residents deserve accessible, accountable representation, not large bureaucratic distances. Turning to service delivery, we are being asked to collapse multiple authorities with multiple organisational structures into a single entity. Each ALMO has evolved its own tenant engagement culture, governance model and capital investment approach. Housing revenue accounts differ in debt profiles, asset strategies and investment standards. Waste and environmental services are designed for the geographies that they serve, some dense urban centres, others with dispersed rural settlements. These differences are not inefficiencies, they're the consequences of each local need. The evidence from other reorganisations is instructive. Dorset and Buckinghamshire both required years of transitional stabilisation. Cultural alignment remains ongoing in both. Northamptonshire split into North and West unitaries. It still faces challenges in creating truly harmonised service models, and in each case cost savings took longer than projected. Service pressures increased during the transition, and the most persistent challenges arose from trying to rationalise multiple operating cultures at pace. Those authorities began their processes with far clearer business cases than we currently possess, yet they still require extensive multi-year bedding in periods. If one wishes to pursue unification, the only responsible method is a phased programme over time. Begin with cultural alignment, shared service pilots and financial harmonisation. Then consider structural merger once that service stability, workforce confidence and resident projections are secured. That's not being obstinate, it's basic organisational governance. Instead, the proposal before us attempts to merge first and figure out harmonisation afterwards. We're basically washing our hands of it to pass it on to someone else. It's their problem. That is not improvement, it is institutional destabilisation with residents as collateral. We also cannot ignore the integrity of the information base. The financial reporting relied upon by government has been challenged and found wanting. Decisions of this magnitude require sound, thoroughly tested data, not optimistic assumptions. Councillors have a fiduciary duty to act on evidence, not aspiration. Reorganisation should enhance democratic accountability and service delivery. These proposals weaken both. It creates a democratic deficit that cannot be reconciled through administrative design, and it attempts institutional consolidation without the necessary groundwork. For those reasons, and in the interest of our residents, our staff and the principle that governance must be both effective and democratic, I will be voting against the proposal. Yes, we all agree that reorganisation is needed, but that needs to be done properly, transparently, and none of the proposals before us meet that standard. I'm also a little bit concerned that the way that the alternative options are presented in the report say do nothing, not considered as the government has a reputation. Well, the legislation actually says that the statutory invitation does not have to be acted upon. We don't have to put a proposal forward, and in the guidance that was issued in July this year, anyone that doesn't put anything forward has to be consulted directly by the Secretary of State. So it's not actually a do-nothing option. We could actually strengthen our hands by not putting a proposal forward. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to vote?
Anybody else want to, anything to add? Oh yes, Councillor Adlington Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. A majority of people when consulted didn't want a mayor, and we got one. Now, 15% of those that have answered this consultation said they strongly agree with replacing 9 councils with 2. 25% strongly disagreed. They know that we will lose our local knowledge and flexibility in tackling issues that matter most to them, the developments that are happening in our area. Unfortunately, those in power don't seem to agree. Today, all of our votes are being made out to be purely symbolic because government says that LGR is happening. It's the illusion of choice for an authority which is the illusion of devolution. It quite literally erases North East Derbyshire from the map. This morning, SEND families, special educational needs and disabilities, have been joined outside County Hall by residents concerned by the widespread and systemic failings threatening the futures of our young learners. Over double the under 35s, and that includes our children and a large majority of their parents, did not know about LGR when compared with older respondents. Just over 550 people out of the 6,800 plus surveyed were under 35. Despite young people making up 41% of the census population locally, their voices represented just 8% in that consultation, whilst all other age groups were overrepresented. These changes disproportionately impact young people who will inherit this new supersized council and will live to see whether the promised land is real. After 6 years, we will apparently save 3%, 44 million, of Derbyshire's annual budget, earned through a one-off payment of 64 million of bureaucratic spending on LGR now. In 25-26, the forecasted budget gap will be over 40 million, and by 2028, there will be £90 million in reserves across Derbyshire, which will be fought over to fund implementation and help these new councils. And I don't think that £35,000 grant that we've got is going to cut. We're already having to fund a lot of that ourselves, I see. All my life, I've watched politicians promise efficiencies, all of which, in the end, have hurt the most vulnerable. And I'm thinking of those SEND children today. The biggest so-called savings come from job cuts, because apparently nobody needs those. 17% is saved from leaner leadership, a further 26% from right-sized teams, and £5,000 from streamlined support. Just ignore the £26,000 in staff exit fees and the fact that there'll be more consultants and less counsellors. This wasn't a manifesto commitment. It's an austerity-like policy cooked up overnight by a visionless government. The Southern Unitary will recover its financial position faster than the Northern, naturally, and may follow many unitary authorities like those set up in the last few years towards special measures and bankruptcy. And we all know who will be left picking up the bill: working people paying more for less. I won't be voting in favour of the measures, whether you put A, A1, B, B1. These are sprung on councils with disregard and disdain, and it will plunge the housing revenue accounts and their 644 million debt into uncertainty, whilst removing a valuable tier of local democracy to be replaced with nothing more than a promise. Unlike the current government, I believe in investing in local people and trusting them to make the right choices about the places they live. And unlike this council, I don't believe in voting for something because those upstairs have said it was inevitable. I want to thank all the council staff who've worked so hard for North East Derbyshire and will continue to try to get the right kind of authority, whatever comes next. But just know, it wasn't one that I support.
Councillor Foster.
Thank you, Chair. For those that have known me a while, it'll come as no surprise that I oppose this LGR. I opposed it under our last Conservative government and I oppose it under this Labour government now, and we've had a change of administration here locally, and I've opposed it under both. Always spoken against it. It's not just about the... I've always been a big fan of sharing services, like the relationship we had with Bolsover. Big fan of that. I understand economies of scale. But the main issue here is the local accountability. It's about the power that local voters and local residents have got. This is going to be removed from people. Now, the people that have designed this, the organisations that are behind pushing this forward, understand that as well, which is why there's the promise under page 20, inclusive governance. And it says new local area committees will be hardwired, a buzzword that means nothing, into day-to-day decision making. And we heard from on the slides earlier, these would also be called neighbourhood area committees. So whichever ones they are, area committees, there's no details of these yet. Now, the reason there's no details of these yet is because these will not be hardwired. They will not be involved in the day-to-day decision making. This is where the news will be passed down. Those decisions will be made away from that. Now, already, anyone can see there's going to be a gap here, and the gap will be the loss of the local district councillor. And it'll mean that these decisions are taken much further away. That's exactly what it means, and no more than that. They can see that. Even now, Councillor Stringer mentioned another figure earlier, but the one I wrote down, if you'll excuse me, was 49% disagreed, citing loss of accountability. I think that's what came up on the slide. It was 49%. We've got the press here today. If the press are going to quote on anything, this is what the press should be quoting on. This council will be voting to recommend this to Cabinet, and yet, in our own consultation, 49% have disagreed, citing loss of accountability. This is the real news for the press. This is what should be in the Derbyshire Times, that we've gone ahead and done something, and 49% of residents are against it, and it's about loss of accountability. Now, if you think about it, loss of accountability is about loss of councillors, loss of, here, hundreds of councillors. You think with the popularity of local politicians that residents would take great joy in getting rid of hundreds of councillors. It might do you as well. I've seen your rep. So you think they'd take joy in that, but they don't. Even they, who don't generally like local politicians, realise about local accountability. They realise, for example, in my own area recently, in Colaston, we managed to stop a battery energy storage site through local accountability, having local people on the ground and speaking to local residents. That will not happen when there's much bigger areas. Those decisions will be taken somewhere in the High Peak, somewhere in Bakewell. They'll be far removed, and there'll be no accountability. That is my concern. That's on the accountability side. On the other side, when it comes to the 3% of the combined budget, the savings, now, 44 million sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money, and it's not to be sneezed at. I'm all for saving money. However, when you look at it, 3% of the combined budget, when you look how things can be, things can change as projects are taken on, local government projects move along, they never stay ever within cost. That 3% is so close to zero, it could very easily be minus 3%. It could end up costing us more. So it's just that 3% is too close to, if it was 10%, 15%, I think, yeah, there's something in this, but it's not. It's 3%. So it's far too close. It could end up costing us money. We've already had lots of warnings from our financial officer, MD, and Mr. Broughton. And we've had those warnings that it might not be accurate. It's some other factor might, not realise this 3%, and that's what will happen. We'll look back on this in a few years' time, and that 3% won't happen. No way it'll happen. I don't mind being quoted on that if I'm still around. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Foster. Councillor Cupit.
Thanks, Chair. I think, back at the start when the LGR process started, I supported it when I was a county councillor in terms of exploring it. I think this document, the 300-pager, is useful. I have read it, Nigel, so I'll look forward to my badge at the end. Thank you. The problem for me, and I think it's the very reason why the document goes into so much detail on all the options and the consultation is so split, is that actually I think what's come forward, there isn't a clear option that works. That's what comes forward to me in the document. I think it's what a lot of members have touched on today. I think we all recognise, or my personal view is, I think we do need some form of structural change in local government. I think there are things that don't work, particularly in terms of the separation of services. So I think you know, we should combine various areas. But I think what's on the table at the moment doesn't work. I share Councillor Foster's concerns about the savings compared to the initial costs, because I'm afraid the savings are quite vague and hopeful, whereas I'm afraid the costs are definitely going to come down the track immediately. And that's, you know, I think, Jane, sorry to quote you, but you used the HS2 analogy, and I'm afraid that that's probably going to happen here, and all the more terrifying that I hadn't realised, because back when the government first proposed this, it was that they were going to meet the costs. They're now saying, oh, no, actually, that 66 million has got to be met from existing resources, which at a time of already pressured financial services, we all know that local government is pressured, to say, right, do you know what, you've got to stomach another 66 million for something that we're not sure will work. We might have to change again. You know, Councillor Hancock mentioned that other areas haven't, you know, it hasn't gone to plan. That is a really significant amount to say to residents, actually your council tax is going on this rather than on send or filling potholes or, you know, or even housing improvements. So that's a concern. And then I'm also concerned by the consultation responses. The consultation replies as a whole are phenomenally low, or terrifyingly low, with less than 1% of the county choosing to, you know, to make a submission, despite it having been everywhere. You know, it was on various posters, etc. And also there's no clear support for any of the options. You know, even option A, rather than A1, only 36% supported it in Amber Valley, who are the most impacted. And that's something that I also feel, as a North East Derbyshire member, but knowing a lot of people in Amber Valley, I feel quite uncomfortable today making a recommendation or a decision to separate a borough that, yeah, we work closely with, but we don't live in Amber Valley, and making a decision to say, oh, do you know what, Amber Valley, we're going to separate you, but not just that, as Councillor Barker said, and again, sorry to quote you, we're basically going to sacrifice you to Derby City for your area to be built on and to be growing room for Derby City. I feel really uncomfortable with that as proposal A1. I think that Amber Valley probably should be kept together, or I certainly think that whatever Amber Valley want, that was just, you know, what came out of their consultation document, is they seem to want to be kept together. But actually, whatever they want should be the preference for Amber Valley, in the same way that I'd feel really annoyed if Amber Valley voted to separate North East Derbyshire. So I feel quite uncomfortable with that as well. So on that basis, and also, again, the resident feedback that I've had, I've spoken to a lot of residents on this, and there's just sort of, it mirrors the consultation responses, if I'm honest. A lot of residents say to me, oh, well, it's going to happen, and there's almost a resignation to it, but not a good resignation of, oh, it's going to happen, we'll see how it goes. It's a, oh, we're being forced down this, we're not sure it's the right way to go, but we don't really feel like we've got a say, which is probably why they didn't take part in the consultation either. So I was going to propose an amendment, but I don't think I can do that constitutionally because Councillor Barker's motion's live. But so I will sort of note it in terms of the feedback for Cabinet, was to say that we shouldn't submit a preferred option to the government at this time, and we should instead submit a formal response requesting that the government notes the divided views on LGR, the unclear sort of preference or option, particularly with regards to the geography, and requests that the government support some form of referendum on local government reform for Derbyshire to give a clearer steer on what the future should be for local government reform. I know people might come back and say, oh, that's kicking the can down the road. I think actually the can's already being kicked down the road. You know, we've said that it's going to take 3, 4, 5, maybe even 6 years to do this. So I can't imagine a delay for a better form of participation, be it a referendum or otherwise, would pose a significant delay. So I was going to put that, but appreciate I can't because of the Constitution. So yeah, would just like to register my comments. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gilbert. Councillor Dale.
Thanks very much, Chair. I mean, like Councillor Cupid, I don't object on a point of principle to LGR, and you know, I think Lee's analogy of the children in care and care leavers sort of episode, if you like, trying to get that strategy through 9 different councils rather than just 1 or 2. And you could repeat that story endlessly, throughout COVID, or, all of those sort of challenges. And actually, COVID, to be fair, we worked quite well as a collective. But there are lots of examples where basic things don't happen because they get swallowed up in bureaucracy and nonsense, red tape, and everything else. And so I definitely see the benefits of LGR, and I don't think any of us probably, if we were starting a system from scratch of local government in this area, in any area, you wouldn't set it out, I don't think, as a 2-tier area. It's just it's evolved that way and it's become that way, and we've made it work, and we've done a pretty good job, I think, mostly of making it work. But you wouldn't set out to set it up that way. So there is, there's a big part of me that does think that LGR, there are a lot of benefits to be achieved. I do take issue with what Councillor Barker said about it being something that the Tory government started. It didn't. It stopped very short of forcing unitarisation on anyone. It's a Labour government initiative. This is very clearly come from the Labour government, and I think ultimately it's down to Rachel Reeves's sums not adding up at the moment, and it's all largely her own fault. But I think if you look at the speed with which we're rushing towards this very, very big decision, and the fact that we've gone from February interim proposals to November having to put the formal proposal in, it doesn't feel like there's been a huge amount of, and this is no disrespect to the officers because you've done huge amounts of work, but what involvement have sort of local members had in much of this? Virtually none at all. What involvement of the community had? Hardly any. We've had an extremely poor response to the consultation. Population of over 1 million people, and yet only 6,900 responses. And that just demonstrates that people either don't understand it, and we've not done enough work to make them understand it. That really strikes me as being a real particular concern, because this is going to be a massive change. It's going to affect their day-to-day lives in a very significant way, and they're not really cited on it fully, and they've not been involved in that process particularly. To form what the new council should look like. We also don't have all the options on the table, and we don't have the one council, in county and city option on the table, which is another option. I know the county minus city option was sort of knocked back by government, but the whole county and city option isn't on the table. And I respect the views of others who feel that isn't, it would be too remote, but I don't think it's beyond the wit of man to make it more localised. A lot of the services that operate on a county-wide basis are already localised. If you look at social care, they work on a locality basis, which essentially mirrors a district. Planning could easily be made to work on local planning committees. So there are ways of making a larger council, have more sort of local representation, local accountability. It's just about how you set it up. It's about having the right people there setting it up. And I don't think fundamentally residents care particularly whether their council is run from Matlock or Chesterfield or Swadlincote necessarily, as long as it's delivering good services. That's what they really, really want. They want, the potholes to be filled, and they want the bins to be emptied, and everything else. So I think, that option isn't on the table here. We're not able to discuss that. The other thing I would just say to caveat that as well is that I don't think any option on the table at all, or those that aren't on the table, will actually fix the challenges that have been sort of presented here. We talked about SEND, adult social care, and children's social care. Those are problems that plague unitary authorities as well. The only thing that's going to fix those problems is national reform. And that's a criticism of governments of all colours, for the past however many years. We're not going to, LGR isn't going to fix all of those challenges and mean that we're going to deliver better services. We need national reform because those systems are all basically broken. So I can't see that that's going to, LGR is going to make a big difference to that. And, clearly we're going to end up in difficult financial challenges. Residents aren't going to fundamentally see the benefits. They're not going to see the savings. If there are any savings and we overachieve the targets that Jane put forward there, I can easily imagine government, and I mentioned Rachel Reeves earlier, government will just rebaseline our funding and absorb as much as they can anyway. So, we're damned whatever we do here, and I don't think anyone's going to see cheaper council tax anytime soon. And it also concerns me, similar to Councillor Cupid, that we're dancing to Derby's tune. You know, option A1, it really strikes me that Nigel mentioned that Derby City needs room to grow. I wonder how residents in Holbrook or Horsley or some of those areas feel about being Derby City's growing space, basically. And it strikes me that we're consigning them to something that they really haven't signed up to at all. So I don't feel comfortable about voting for that. And as a result, I'll be voting against the motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dale. Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Chair. It's a very big issue, and when this was announced last December, I was shocked, as other people were, and dismayed about that. And I still have some concerns and reservations about it, the speed at which things are doing, the pace of it, whether it's dumbing down local democracy and representation of people. There are all sorts of questions. But in spite of those questions, we've got a process that's going to happen. We're not taking a decision today about whether this process happens or stops. If North East Derbyshire doesn't submit an option, the government's not going to withdraw and say, oh, well, we'll go back to the drawing board and have a look at what we're going to do then. We've been told quite clearly it's going to plough ahead, and it'll plough ahead without us. And I think, as has been suggested, that we don't do anything. I think sitting in a darkened room with our fingers crossed, hoping it's going to go away, is not an option, and it's not responsible. It's not a responsible thing to do for the residents of North East Derbyshire, who will be concerned if they're left behind and end up with a deal that's worse because something's been done to them, rather than us having some initiative to try and influence what is being done. I mean, thanks to Lee and Jane and Matt and Nigel and Kevin and the team that's put this together, it is a weighty document. It's very informative. The options have been weighed up, not just by North East Derbyshire, but in consultation with the other districts and boroughs, with the exception of the county, because they withdrew and took their bat and ball home and wouldn't play the game. You can't complain now that their option's not there. They've been the ones that's not put that option in. So we've got what we have got in partnership with people that are playing the game and want to direct where we might go. Yeah, the consultation returns were very low, but you have to take cognizance of what's been said in those. You know, people have expressed some of their views. And as we've seen, the two-tier system that we've got currently is not working. It fails in all sorts of ways. And just locally and within my portfolio, a couple of examples. When we had the floods last year and people's lives and homes were devastated, in Renishaw we'd got residents and our staff identifying where there were blocked gullies causing the flooding, and our officers had to be persuasive and get in touch with the county council officers to try and get them to come and clean those gullies out while people were suffering terribly in their lives. That can't be right, and that's one authority with another. The other one that we've got in my portfolio is waste services. We're waste collectors, and the county currently are waste disposal, and they dictate to us through licence where we can go with that. That's just recently changed, and we're now at a waste disposal site where we've got our lorries queuing up with lorries from Chesterfield, Bolsover and Amber Valley, waiting to offload the waste so they can get back onto their rounds and collect other. That disrupts our programmes, it disrupts waste collection services, and it's not efficient. And if we can tie those things up and bring them together under one roof, we're improving services for local people. So there is an argument for that, and I think, you know, although we've all got fears about that, we need to balance that up as well if we're looking for the best for our residents. And, you know, we've been told, and we've had a look at all the information in this weighty document, there's not a fag paper between a lot of the options. But what tips the scale for me towards A1 is, you know, we're not going to start seeing savings now until year 6. We've got to keep spending money from year 1. We've got to look at investment, we've got to look at development in our communities, and we've got to look at what benefits, I think, residents, not just in North East Derbyshire, although that's my primary concern, but anybody that's going to be in that northern unitary. And when you look at where we draw the line in A1, for me, that does, through council tax and business rates, enhance the financial resources we might have to invest in our communities. Not by a few thousand, but by millions of pounds. And that's going to have a significant impact when we look at a more balanced distribution of resources that we've got. That's why I'll be favouring A1. I think it's a responsible move to take. We need to be at that table and having our say, not sticking our heads in the sand waiting for somebody else to do it to us. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Pickering. Councillor Durham.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, again, I just want to say thank you so much to the officers for doing all the hard work. Nigel, I'll expect my Blue Peter badge in the post, please, because I did read it all. But thank you to the officers and all the staff under these particularly hard circumstances where, as Councillor Addington Stringer said, it is looking at job cuts, and to do it under these circumstances is horrible. And so I thank you for your professionalism and your dedication. I'm not going to turn around and say I don't agree with a lot of the things that some of the councillors opposite are saying. I'm not, because I think there's a lot of valid points. I think there's a lot of value being said, that there is concerns about the loss of democracy. There is concerns about, well, how much is this actually going to save? I take Councillor Foster's point that, he was opposed to the LGR under both the Tories and Labour. And I'm not going to try and argue against that. On the send front, yeah, this isn't going to be a panacea. We were made clear in the presentation beforehand. This isn't going to fix everything. It's not going to be some sort of magic fix. Those are massive problems. We did get some extra funding in send, but we're still seeing those problems at county level, and it's hideous. I do want to challenge Councillor Dale back, trying to make this very party political. I don't view it that way, quite frankly, and this is coming through to my main point. The Tory government did start this. Let's be honest here, Councillor Dale. The former chair, Councillor Thacker, our own Nostradamus on this one, turned around and all told us, "I told you so," because when the Metro mayors were introduced, he warned us all, and he was right, that this was where it was going to go. And so I don't view this as so much Conservatives or Labour. I view this as a national government and a successive national government, Whitehall effectively, some Sir Humphrey somewhere, turning around and inflicting this decision upon us. That's what I view it as. So I don't really appreciate turning around going, "Oh, it's all Labour, it's all Labour," and I'm not going to turn around and go, "Oh, it's all the Tories, all the Tories," because I think that it misses the point that we are local councillors, and we're here. We don't get into this for some magical game of politics. I got into it because I was annoyed about how the roads were, and I went along and managed to get the potholes fixed in Grassmore, and now, and I helped people in the village. That's what I did. That's how I got involved. And so let's not make it about that. Let's make it about what it is, doing the best for local people here. And this is my main point to the opposition that I wanted to raise, and it's been raised a little bit before. We don't get the best outcome for the residents of North East Derbyshire by saying we don't like it and by walking away. And that's what a lot of what's been said opposite comes to. I don't like A, I don't like A1, I don't like B, I don't like B1, so I don't want to do anything. Well, that takes away our power and influence. We do not have the explicit power to pull a lever and make the LGR stop, but we do have the influence and we do have the capacity to steer it and get the best outcome for our residents. So I'm not going to say I like the LGR. That would be a lie. I'm not going to say I'm happy, because that would be a lie. but I am going to vote for this because I do believe this is the best outcome for our residents in North East Derbyshire. And that, beyond playing politics, should be what we're doing, getting the best outcome for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Councillor Weatherall.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have to say I'm massively conflicted here, and I still haven't decided how I'm going to vote. This has been a really good debate. Thank you, colleagues. Really good debate, and it's focused my mind. Just on some of the numbers, I noted that for councillors at Derbyshire County Council, they are currently running at about 10,000 residents to one councillor. This option would take it down to 5,000. So actually, you could argue that actually for some of those big services, big important decisions that are made, we're getting better representation. You could argue that. Does local government need to change? Oh yes, massively it needs to change. That's absolutely without a doubt. Are we now being asked to take a leap of faith here? Totally. Do we believe that the benefits will be realised? I don't know yet, but when we look at some of the other big transformational programmes that have been mentioned today, that have been promised, then ditched, the cost to the taxpayer, astronomical, that again is in my head. What do we do here? Will it be done to us if we don't put an option forward? Yes. What might that look like? We have no idea. So I just think we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. And I'll tell you what has focused my mind particularly, thank you, Councillor Foster, that 3% argument and how close to the wire that actually is. And given everything that we know about politicians, about the way that local government organises itself and the decisions that it makes, am I absolutely convinced that those 3% savings are going to be realised? I think you probably know the answer to the question really by the tone of my voice. So, you know, it's disappointing that it wasn't in a manifesto. We didn't know it was going to happen, although Councillor Thacker had telegraphed it, and he's very right. It's a pity he's not here to hear this. But, yeah, I'm still on the fence, but I think I know which way I'm leaning. So that's my contribution. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Weatherall. Councillor Shipman.
Thank you, Chair. It's quite interesting to see the Labour councillors in the room now rallying behind this proposal, even though for months and months and months they've been telling us they didn't want it, but now we're clapping the MD when he's giving a presentation like it's the best thing since sliced bread. So clearly now they do support LGR. While the rest of us are here making arguments for our residents as to why it's a terrible idea, which will leave you in no surprise that I cannot and will not support this proposal on the table today. This one county, two councils thing that we're being shoved down our throat, I don't think it's going to work. But let's call this for what it really is. It's top-down reorganisation that nobody on the ground wants. It's something our residents don't want. It's a distraction, as we mentioned earlier, from the real issues that are affecting the district and from stopping this council making the efficiencies and the changes it needs to probably make more, at least equal, but if not more, savings than we would do as part of this mega council. It's going to weaken local democracy, not strengthen it, as we keep being told. And if you look at the consultation that's gone out, only 39% of people supported the one county, two councils proposal. So that left 61% of people...
We've already had that point raised, Councillor Shipman. So.
Okay, thanks for that.
Well, we're just repeating, aren't we? Repeating what...
Well, if you didn't jump in straight away, I could finish off my sentence and we might get to the bottom of the point. But that means 61% of the people in the district were not convinced by this proposal on the table. Now, I don't believe for 1 second that if that was an internal policy in this council, that the leadership, all the officers, would be arguing to try and convince this council that we should support something that only had 39% of the public that we represent on a policy. That is wrong, and I think that the leadership, both staff and political leadership of this council, need to acknowledge that the residents do not want it. We are told this is about efficiency, but experience from elsewhere in terms of unitaries that are being set up shows that those efficiencies are not necessarily realised. They're definitely not realised in the time frame that's set out in the modelling, if at all. We're going to be losing local voices, there'll be centralisation, there'll be cuts, and bigger isn't always better. And this idea of the larger authority will soon make will soon make complications with the existing system. It won't make the changes to the existing system any simpler, as Councillor Pickering mentioned. It's going to, when you've got a larger organisation, all it will do is, you're not going to remove the amount of lorries going into the waste management centre. You're still going to have the same amount of lorries going in, so I don't think a bigger organisation changes that. It just moves the problem elsewhere. So why are we gambling with taxpayers' money on all these ideas that were being that have been promoted by officers and the council's leadership? I don't think it's right. Communities like ours, whether that's from Claycross to Dronfield or Ashover to Homewood, they're going to suffer as a consequence of this, because when all the chips are down and things go wrong, who is going to put that bike back together, Lee? It's not going to be me or you. Well, it will be me because I'm a taxpayer in North East Derbyshire, but it's going to be the residents that have got to put that bike back together, and it might not get to the end of that race that you keep telling us that we're going to get there. It's just not going to work. And I think that's the fact that it's going to affect North East Derbyshire residents is an important one that we can't forget. So let's not forget what's in the council's local plan as well, and that it mentions place a lot, and that means the people in this district. And it's right that we talk about place in the council's plan. When residents have a problem, they don't want to be passed around. They want to be able to get in touch with somebody that can help them with that issue, not have issues swept under the carpet. And I've no doubt with some of the recent issues we've had locally, that had it been a much larger council, those would have been considered such a macro level that councillors from High Peak couldn't have given a toss what's happening in Wingworth, for example. But so they want someone local who they can contact to address those issues. And I take the point that was raised by the managing director earlier about that we need a vision, and that if we don't have the vision, there's no ambition and we can't make those changes. But the problem is we can't guarantee that that vision is going to come to fruition, because we don't know what the makeup of the new council is going to be like. We don't know who the council officers are going to be like. You can't assume that the culture that we've got here is going to be easily transferred into a new organisation. So those efficiency savings may not ever be realised because of that. But what we can guarantee is a costly process, disruption, higher council tax, and a massive risk to our residents, because ultimately they are going to be the ones picking up them pieces. So if the government is serious about wanting to improve local services, and I agree, do nothing is not an option, but the do something is the government actually investing in local councils. And that's not been mentioned a single time today, which baffles me, because that is what the administration that's in power now promised, which was invested in local councils. We've not seen that. We're seeing that this is the idea to invest in local councils by asking them to all merge, take these big risks on local government reorganisation, and then potentially it's going to cost everyone a load of money.
Councillor Shipman, how close are you to someone else? Because I have let people overrun,
yeah, no, I appreciate
but
that,
you've
Chair.
had the longest so far.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Chair. So Derbyshire deserves better than this. We deserve local councils that are close to the people that they serve, financially stable, and empower people to make the real changes locally. So I'll stand firmly against this proposal, this one county, two fingers up to North East Derbyshire residents proposal that's on the table, and I think we should vote this down. With 61% of residents in Derbyshire saying no to it, I think it's incumbent on every single person in this room to follow what the people that put us here are saying.
Just repeating what you said. That's it. Okay, thank you, Councillor Shipman.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gillett.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a feeling I'm going to go beyond 5 minutes as well. When I was first offered this role, I actually initially said no, and I took quite a bit of persuading. And I took quite a bit of persuading because, first of all, I assumed that it would take up a lot of my time, and I got that wrong. It took even more than I possibly dreamt, because I've lived and breathed this now for the last 4 months. But I also said no because, along with Councillor Thacker, and his absence allows me to say it, I did actually say, or I can say today, told you so, because I not only spoke against the mayoral combined authority, I was one of, I think, only 16 people in the whole of Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire who voted against it. And I did that for a number of reasons, one of which because it seemed to me as night followed day that it would produce reorganisation. And the only thing that surprised me is the speed with which it's happened. But I said then, and I feel now, even if it's not the North East Derbyshire taxpayers who are paying for the mayoral combined authority after the council tax, they are still paying for it out of their taxes. And with the best will in the world, I can't go and talk to my residents and say, you've got to pay for a county council, a district council, a police and crime commissioner, a Derbyshire Fire Authority, and on top of that, you're paying for a mayor as well. We talk about whether we are keeping or getting rid of a two-tier system, when the reality is now we in effect have a three-tier local system, with the mayor and with the districts and the counties and cities. I serve on the MCA Scrutiny Committee. I represent the districts and boroughs in Derbyshire on that committee. And for, I was going to say for a bit of fun, it wasn't really for fun, but I went to watch their last MCA board meeting, just to see how it worked, to meet the characters I'd heard about, and just to see how the overall situation worked. And I sat in the public gallery. And do you know who I sat next to in the public gallery? Him, the leader of this council. And sat next to him was the leader of another district and borough councils, because they don't sit on that top table. That board that is now spending tens of millions, and over the lifetime of the next 10 years or so, billions of pounds, we do not have a seat on that top table. And I don't think that's right. But mayors aren't going to go. They're here to stay now. They are here to stay, whether we like it or not, and I didn't like it, but I have to accept they're here today. I fought that battle, I lost, and I have to accept the way it is at the moment. I don't see this government getting rid of it. Our chance to influence that is through the Strategic Leaders Board. Strategic Leadership Board. And it is true that this council does chair that, but for the last 12 months it's not worked effectively. Not for anything we've done, but quite simply because the then leader Derbyshire County Council didn't like the fact that he didn't chair it, and so he pulled the funding for it from that council and pulled the hosting arrangements, and it's taken the last 12 months to sort all that out and create a system where the districts and boroughs can now have proper influence through that. But we are then only one of 10 councils around that table, so we get a 10% vote, as it were. So anybody who thinks that the current system works, I think you don't understand the current system. It's not working as effectively as it could do for our authority when you've got a three-tier system. That's 3 democratically elected bodies, each with a legitimacy, each able to take its own decision, and you need all of them to agree when you're taking decisions. And we've seen when in a two-tier system how the county and our district have had disagreements and things haven't happened that should have happened. You know, those decisions we may agree with, we may not agree with, but a decision needs taking rather than no decision at all. And that happens all too often. And who's left in the middle of that? The communities that we represent. Who do they blame? Well, we blame the county blame us, and we all blame the mayor. Nothing gets done. And so something has to change. And I am as committed to local councils as anybody in this room. I've been on them now for over 28 years. And I'm still incredibly proud of Derbyshire County Council, even though I'm no longer on it, and I'm incredibly proud of this. And I will find it personally very emotionally hard to see those 2 councils go. But I'm not here to serve the councils. I'm here to serve my communities at the end of the day. And sometimes that involves taking some really, really tough decisions. And this is one of those. When you look at the two-tier system itself, does that work? And over the last few months, I've been reflecting on it, and I've seen situations where it just hasn't worked. Steve's pinned some of my lines, actually, because I remember Storm Babette and the problems that occurred in parts of Claycross with flooding, and the fact that the part of the local responsibility was split between the county and the district meant that we didn't do as much as we should have done, as quickly as we should have done. And who's now responsible for driving through the agenda, for making sure it never happens again? And that's split, and so it's not happening at pace in the way it should do. Look at disabled facilities grants. That also is split between this council and the county council. The county council has its financial problems that we're all aware, so it's reviewed that and taken decisions that have had major implications both for the individuals concerned but also for this council. And I have been taking those decisions that matter. I might have still taken the same decision. But it's been taken for the benefit of that council with huge implications for this council and ultimately for huge implications for the residents as well. And that will go with reorganisation if it takes place, because it will be one council that will have to look at both ends of the decision and take responsibility for all the decision and then be held accountable for it. Last month I sat on my first planning committee meeting, and I've been as frustrated with planning as everybody, I think, from time to time. And the fact that we're two-tier, I don't think helps with that, if I'm honest now, the more I've thought about it. This council takes a decision based on all the information it gets. The county provides a lot of that information, particularly with regards to local infrastructure. And I sat here and listened to Councillor Baker make a really good point, because I made it myself in my communities. How does this benefit in terms of the local infrastructure, particularly schools, public transport, roads? The county provide us with the information, but they don't always provide us with the nuance or the understanding that I think we need, and I think as a county councillor for a number of years I was able to bring to that meeting. It will take time, but one unitary authority will hopefully resolve a lot of that. So don't think that what we've got now is perfect, because it clearly isn't. And the people who will ultimately lose out on all this, and I think we all care about, we're reaching different conclusions. That's perfectly legitimate. That's how we do things in this country. We elect people like us to come here, to have a debate, to make our mind up and to vote. But I've been on a journey, and I've reached a conclusion, as much as it pains me, that now we have a mayor, and the mayors are here to stay, a two-tier structure between districts and county isn't the right way forward for the future. And there are all the risks that have been outlined by other people, and I get those, and I've argued some of those myself. But in the end, I've had to make a judgment call, and the judgment call I'm making today is that we need to go ahead with reorganisation. And if this council were not to do it, it won't stop it. All it needs is one council out of all of them in Derbyshire to make that submission. It becomes a live issue, and then the Secretary of State can take it forward. And I would sooner put forward an argument or a proposal that I think is in the best for North East Derbyshire residents, even if it is a compromise. And I hear what's been said about other councils, particularly Amber Valley, and I share those concerns. I've got a lot of friends in Amber Valley. I've got strong emotional connections with that community. And I know what I'm saying upsets them, because I've told them to their face, some of them, that in the end, I've come down on A1, splitting that council. And they don't like that, but I think that is in the best interest both of North East Derbyshire residents, but ultimately in the interest of that council if it is created. But if I was sat in the south of the county, to be honest with you, I'd vote for B1. Because I think for the very reasons I'm voting for 8-1 and all the advantages that it brings to us, so that some of those advantages would go in the south. So again, they're two perfectly legitimate outcomes. I'm not the ultimate decision maker. My job is to do the best for the residents of North East Derbyshire, and that's why I've reached that conclusion. Option A and B, I think both. Part of the problem with this is the structure we have to go through to get to where we want. We can't just put option B1 or A1 forward. We have to put a base option and then a modification of that. And that's just the way the legislation is. And I don't think either A or B are actually solutions that a Secretary of State would ultimately accept. A, placing Amber Valley in the north, does have this anomaly where the bits just around Derby City, the Mackworth area I think it is, which is a principal housing development area, I think in Amber Valley's local plan, is there to serve Derby City. That's why it's there. And therefore it makes logical sense, if you're going to redesign a new council, for that area to be in Derby City for service delivery and all the other reasons we've heard. But if I live there, I probably want to be in the north, but I get why it's there. Placing all of Amber Valley in the south, though, not splitting the council, but placing all of that in the south, has consequences for us. It means we have two very uneven-sized councils. We would be the smaller of those and potentially the junior partner in that. And while it doesn't mean it's not a viable council, it means it's less able to survive the risks that the finance officer has described as part of the advice they're giving us. When faced with A1 and B1, the simplest solution, as I think some people have done, is to say, well, the scoring of A1 and B1 is slightly different, and therefore we should go with the best scoring. Again, I don't agree with that. Otherwise, why are we sat here? Our job is to bring our judgment here. Some people have reached the conclusion with that judgment that we don't go for it. I think we should. The differences between A1 and B1 are relatively small. I think it's only 4 criteria that tip it from being A1 being the best scorer to B1. 2 involve consultation, but B1 wasn't consulted upon. It's just an assumption that's been made by the people who've done the scoring. And then the other 2, one is about the number of over 65s, and the other, I think, is about the council tax base. And the numbers involved between those 2 are a few thousand each out of something like 250,000. So the margins are really, really small, and I think both options would be perfectly legitimate. But our job is to do, I think our job ultimately in all this is to do what we think is in the best interests of North East Derbyshire. There's been quite a bit of comment about the reduction in the number of councillors, and there is some truth in that. You know, going down from 400 councillors to 150, 200 is a big jump. But it's not just the number of councillors that makes a difference. It's whether the work you put into it. You can have a small ward or a small division and not do any work. You can have a really big division and do a lot of work. And having covered both, you have to put a lot of work in when you're covering 10,500. I think I do have some worries about that. The actual numbers are 5,200-ish. The county divisions will grow to 10,600. You know, I can tell you every polling district if you ask me and how much people are in that, because I remember doing all that when we did it. It is hard, but it is a factor, but it doesn't stop proper representation. Part of it will be whatever structures the new council puts in place afterwards to make sure that local communities are represented and get a voice, but also the effectiveness of the local council in exactly the same way that works now. We all work differently, some may be more effective than others, but that's how it goes, and that will be the same. I'm coming to an end, yes, Chair. So I'll cut short the other few things I was going to say, but I have been on a journey, and I slightly surprised myself where I now am. I would encourage council, A, to support the principle of local government organisation and seize the challenge and the vision that the managing director has outlined, because I think he's right on that. But if we have to make an option, and I think we do, it should be A1 rather than B1.
Thank you, Councillor Gillett. Have you got anything to add?
How long have I got?
You've got 2 minutes.
Yeah, I think, I think Kevin said most of that, and I've got some sympathy with what's been said. We can't deny, like Marcus said, we fully accept them arguments, but we're where we are. And like I said in my opening remarks, we're trying to do as best for the people of North East Derbyshire that we represent, and there's been a lot of work, like Kevin said, soul searching really into all this. But to move a motion to say we don't agree with it, we're not going to submit an option, we're just handing over to somebody else to make that decision, and that don't feel right either. So hence we've arrived at that option A1, because the other option on the table, B1, means that we the northern unit will have less resources to spend going forward. So it's no-brainer to me. That's what we in North East Derbyshire should be supporting. I fully accept what I've made 4 pages of notes here, so I can't go answering to everybody. But I get what you're saying, Frank. It's a top-down thing. We've all got to hold our hands up. We're a small cog in a big wheel, aren't we? Or something like that. There's some saying along them lines. And we've got to do the best with that, what's being presented to us, and that's where we are. And I'll leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Barker. Right, well, we've had a motion put forward and seconded, so we're going to take a vote on that. So everybody? Right, thank you, members. That's been carried. as that recommendation to go forward to Cabinet on Thursday. Right. Well, that concludes the main part of the business, but I have got one other point to add before we all go, is there will be another extraordinary meeting of Council. It's been called for next Tuesday, the 11th of November at 6 p.m. And it's consider a motion on Wingworth Lido. So that's for next Tuesday at 6 p.m. So thank you very much, members. And that concludes today's business.